Welcome to the Mad Ones. I had a girl offer herself to me as a second wife host, Cam Harless. And with me,
What?
as always, is your already has five husbands host, Miss Jessica Green.
It's true. I keep them in a bin under the stairs. Question, was she hot?
She wasn't bad looking. I was not
Mm.
insulted. Let me
I
tell
gotta
you
tell
that.
you never want to be the first wife. The second wife seems to, be where it's at. I don't know if you watched Keep Sweet, Obey and Pray
I did
about
not.
about the Mormon cult.
No,
That
but
was
someone
definitely worth.
tagged me in a tweet saying that Ben should come back and talk about that.
Yes. Once I watched that, I was like, oh, I have so many more questions for Ben now.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I'll reach
let's
out
do
to him.
that. Okay, awesome.
Another cult. Before we get started, I do want to let you know this show is 100% brought to you by fans and patrons. So hit like, subscribe, share the show with your friends. We have all sorts of topics that we've discussed. So share them with someone who might gain from them. Also, if you want occasional early episodes, and there is some mild talks of me doing something a little daily to kind of grab some more people who want to hear from me for some reason now. We'll get to that. But if you want an occasional early episode, a Zoom hangout, and my eternal gratitude, as well as Jessica's, patreon.com/the Mad Ones. Also, you can grab a shirt, a mug, a tank top, which is the best shirt known to man, over at weirdmadones.com/store if you want to rep us wherever you're going. But let's get to the fun stuff. Our guest tonight, I found on TikTok, and the first video I saw, which we're going to show you just right after we introduce him, just grabbed me. And what he's doing is fascinating, and I want to hear all about it. But joining us tonight is a journalist and a producer of alternative media. He's threatened the life of the evil turtle person in Washington, D.C. He's doing his damnedest to take down a cult right out of Alaska who view children as property and steal them. He's a man on a mission. Welcome to the show, Mr. Syran Warner.
Howdy. Fabulous to be here. Super excited to have this conversation.
Dude, I do want to show people that video because of, how you tried to get the FBI to pay attention to this cult. So we're going to do that in a second. But after we watch that, I do want to go into like how you got here, because you did another video. It was kind of longer the other day on TikTok, talking about your kind of road to there and what the investigation you were doing when you found out about them. I'd love to hear all about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I'm so excited because this is such a fun video.
I guess the one thing to say to set up this clip is that there was a situation where I wanted to get information to the FBI. I tried really hard. I called multiple times. I got hung up on. They would not give me any way to send a file to them, and I just decided, like, fuck it. I'm just going to like make up a crime that will hopefully have them like take everything off my hard drive, and then problem solved.
Awesome. So let's play this, and then we can talk all about it, because I know you want to get the story out there, and if I can make it, let's try to make as many great clips that you can use on your TikTok from this show as possible, man. Let's
yeah,
get it
for
all.
Sure.
All right, so here is that video.
Thank you. And what is the federal violation you're calling to report?
I am planning on being Mitch McConnell, and the plot to
Mitch McConnell?
Yeah, Mitch McConnell.
So what are you trying to report?
I'm trying to report myself. I have a folder called Plot to Mitch McConnell, where it's very clear what my plans are. I think some federal agent should come and take everything off my hard drive.
And your plan to do this is because the FBI will not listen to you?
Yes.
So what are you trying to report that the FBI isn't listening to you?
Organized crime of Mark Witt. I'm telling you, though, I'm dead serious. I'm definitely going... Mitch McConnell is fucking toast. I'm going to kill him.
So why do you want to target Mitch?
I just don't like him.
You just don't like him?
No, I just don't like Mitch McConnell. I'm a psychopath, I guess. Mitch has always been on my radar, and it's time for him to hasta la vista.
Do you have weapons in your home, though? Do you own any weapons?
I don't know. I don't know if there's anything weapon-like. I mean, there's a bong. I have marijuana in my house too.
You have marijuana?
Yes, yes. And I plan on selling it. I'm gonna sell my marijuana to fucking school kids.
Okay, how long have you had this plan?
I don't know, 10 minutes?
Why do you want to sell marijuana to school children?
I don't know, because I'm crazy.
How do you plan on finding Mitch once you land in D.C.?
I know where he works.
You know where he works?
Yes.
Okay. I want to focus on why you're wanting to kill Mitch. Now, you told me you didn't like him.
I don't like him.
I mean, yeah. That's the most logical thing in the world. Why is she so confused?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple, there's just like a couple moments, and you got to keep in mind, like when I was making that call, like I was certain, like I was gonna go to jail. Like I tidied up my room. I literally like I had my marijuana like out on the table. Like I had my clothes. Like I mean, I just assumed that like I was just about to go to jail.
The clacker's on you, man. I gotta be honest.
When did you make this call?
I think it was December 27th of 2020. It was like right before I launched the website.
Okay. Because when I'm listening to you, I'm like, if you want them to take your computer, just tell them that there's bad stuff on it, and I think you can read between the lines, but say that it's Hunter Biden's. But no, then it would be erased probably.
Then they'd be gone. Yeah.
Yeah. I literally like I thought of it. It was such a split second thing. Like the original tape of that is like a couple of I think it's like a couple hours long because it features like I called multiple times, and the last time I got hung up on, I said, like, as soon as the call hangs up, I'm like, I'm going to call and say I'm going to kill a president. Like, that's just like spontaneously. Right. But like, I didn't want to go like that far down the path. I chose Mitch because I don't like him. And he was literally the first person that popped in my head. Like some politician, got to think of some politician. And just see what happens. But yeah, I mean, I assume
you called them several times first, and they hung up on you.
Yes,
but this was had you already threatened a public official at this point?
No. I mean, that was like I made a decision that night that it was like I'm going to call the FBI, and no matter what happens, like they're going to get these files. Like this is going to happen. Like I don't care. Like I sat down. I had like, I had eaten a meal. I was ready to call the FBI, and they were just gonna I was gonna create a situation where they listened. The idea of like calling and saying I was gonna murder Mitch McConnell was totally like spontaneous though. I never had that idea before. It was just something that like in the moment, it just seemed like the right thing to do. And I guess like, I mean, I just knew I had my fastball. Like I knew I knew like I wasn't like fucked up or anything. Like, I mean, people sometimes think like I was like high on acid or something when I did this because it's so weird. But like, I just knew that like I was going to make this call. It was going to be recorded, and then like, it was going to be good.
Right.
And then like, eventually like, I played it for somebody a month down the line, and it was like, man, I should really like, this needs to be like on the internet somewhere, because after I talked to the Secret Service and that was over, it was like, well, this is like totally legal for me to put anywhere. So like it should be on the internet.
Well, I mean, it's truly hilarious to listen to. Yeah. So I do want to commend you on that. It was funny. But let me ask, was there any reaction to that from the FBI or from Secret Service? Did they do anything?
Yeah, I mean, I had to meet the Secret Service. The Secret Service has an office in Minneapolis where I live. And like, I had to sit down in like a small room and talk to people in suits.
They didn't come to your house?
No, it's a funny story though. Like they called me, I think it was the next day or the day after, but like when they called, I was like so excited because I thought, oh my God, they're going to come. And they talked to me about it, and they're like, yeah, you need to come to the office at 1 o'clock or something like that. And I was like, hey, can we make it 3? I kind of have something going on. And they're like, no, like you're coming at 1, we're playing nice with you right now. Like you're gonna be here when we say you're gonna be here, or like we're gonna make you be here.
Damn. So, okay, I guess the thing to know about this is what would inspire you to need to take such drastic measures? What is the thing that caused you to have to go to this extreme?
Well, I guess like at that point, it was like December of 2020. I mean, in November, like the end of 2020, basically, like I got this huge dump of information about this cult. And like I was listening, like I had been talking to cult members for I mean, I have hours and hours and hours of tape of me talking to people in this cult where I had no idea that the cult existed. Like, and listening back to those tapes, there was like some like unsettling stuff on it. And then I got these tapes of the leader where he was like talking real serious about death and mixing sex and religion. I heard like just these stories about people being molested, and like there were a bunch of kids involved in the group. Like that's just like, I mean, it just and they were like sort of threatening me online to like stay away. And it just reached a point where I was like, fuck this, like I'm gonna end this right now, like I'm just gonna call the FBI and like this isn't like a newspaper story anymore. And I guess like it didn't work, obviously, because like I'm here, I'm not in jail, and the cult is still active. But it did like create a scenario like with TikTok and everything where like now everybody in Tonasket knows about what's going on, or everybody who knows in the area of where the cult is well aware of like their neighbors and are upset. And part of that is the Mitch McConnell thing.
Yeah. Well, let's rewind for a second, because I think we need to get a fuller picture of what's going on and talk about the cult itself, and then build from there. But before that, I think I would like to kind of break down who you are, what you did previous to this story and previous to calling Mitch McConnell, as well as what got you to figure out that this was a cult. What was I've seen it before on TikTok, which he has a great TikTok. You should go check that out at Syran Warner. But if you could walk us through that story, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long story. I literally started this in 2016, so we're talking about 6 years worth of material. But I think I can truncate it. I guess like my background like was as an alt weekly reporter. Like the pandemic like destroyed alt weeklies, but like it used to be that there was like a weekly paper in every major city that was kind of alternative, and you could say the F word in it and it was an alternative to the newspaper. And I sort of like built a niche in this alt weekly called City Pages, where I was kind of the reporter who would just kind of do anything. Like there's I lived in extremes at the paper. I was not a crime reporter, never touched crime ever. And then I heard this story in 2016 about this murder of this guy that I had met before in Alaska. And the story just blew my mind. Like I never would have thought it was real, but the person I heard it from was like a very trustworthy person, and I knew their information came from the victim's mom. Like right away, I mean, it was like, and when I looked online to see the story, like all the super important information about this murder, like never made the news. Like how this guy died, like in Minnesota, like if something happened like this in the newspaper the next day or the day after, like the details of the crime would be described in some sort of like PG format or something. That never happened in Alaska. and it was this long trial. It was this rich kid, and like, I don't know, like I dove into it. The fact of the matter is that there was an extraordinarily brutal murder, and the guy who killed this Minnesota dude did 2.5 years for. I mean, if you saw the crime scene photos, you'd think like 10 people were murdered because of how much blood there is.
Yeah, you were talking about it on your TikTok, and you said that there was an ice axe, or snow axe that was used in it, and then he was shot afterwards. So it's like classic overkill.
Ice axe, shotgun, he's dead. And then there's a 30-06, which is used after Genghis is deceased. And that's the thing, like the guy was pleading self-defense, saying like, oh, I had no choice. And it's like, man, like that third weapon, the second gun, the 30-06, like that just does not make sense with the story about like, I had to do it. Like I had no other choice but to kill my friend. Like that's sort of like what made that thing bananas. And it's just one of those things, like it never went to trial. It should have gone to trial. Like it's insane that it didn't. And just to imagine, like if it had, like the prosecutor is going to say first day one of the trial is going to show the crime scene photos and say, and talk about the third gun, talk about the 30-06, and say like, hey, the defense is going to tell you stories about self-defense, and like this element doesn't make any sense. Anyway, like I've gone on too long with that part of the story, but I just like started down the path of covering this homicide and started talking to kind of whoever would talk to me. And at some point I got in touch with this source who told me they knew everything about the case. There was like I was wrong. Like there was information out there that I didn't have, and I was just like starving for information. And this person said like, hey, if I decide I trust you, like I'll tell you everything. And I went down that path, and in hindsight, like now I know, like this is somebody in a destructive religious cult who is interfering with this case, who is interfering with all kinds of other stories, who's smearing people with blackmail. Like I just didn't know any of that at the time.
Wow. And so the girl was in the cult. Is that what piqued your interest and started looking into it? And
no, I mean, I had no idea she was in the cult. Like there's a recording. There's a recording of me hearing about the cult for the first time where I just like laughed my ass off. Like, this lawyer that I talked to, like I said something like, hey, like Katie told me this. So like basically we were having an argument, and I was like, hey, well, this serious person who has like a serious job told me this. And he was like, have you heard about the cult she's in? And there's like penis washing and wife swapping. And I laughed and changed the subject. Like he might as well have said like, she's a cosmonaut or something. Like it just seemed too insane to be true. So, I knew I had a tip for a year before I found out that, like, before I actually realized, like, oh shit, this is like a cult, and this source of mine that I was talking to all the time is like, she's like in this cult.
Is she high in the cult, or?
Well, no. Okay, I guess like one thing that's really important to mention is like she is no longer in the cult. Okay. I have talked to her since she exited, and we had a long, important conversation. We had a couple conversations that some of that is documented in videos I've put out, but our relationship has kind of soured because at a certain point I had to just be honest and tell her like, hey, like I've got all these tapes of, you doing something very bad in this murder case that like that's part of the story, and you could work with me, and I think people will be like, I think people will take it easy on you if you like kind of help expose these people that hurt you and hurt all these other people. But like, the murder thing, like that's just not going away. Like I'm not gonna stop talking about it because it's, I want this thing to be big enough to that Mark is done.
So is it? I noticed you've only used his first name. Is that because you're worried about legal issues? If
Yeah,
you
I mean,
use his full name,
I generally use just the first name, last initial, but now that people are like writing stories about it, they use full names.
okay.
There's another story that's coming out soon. I guarantee everybody's full names are going to be used. I mean, I guess like I talked to a lawyer in the beginning, like because like the Body International, my website, is like technically it's a corporation. Like, and I had to legally like incorporate myself as a measure to that somebody just couldn't send an email and say somebody said something nasty about me and now my website's gone. Like I had to become a company in the beginning. And when I was talking to the lawyer, it's just one of these like cosmic serendipitous things where this lawyer knew all about cults and Scientology suing reporters and the anti-cult laws in France and Belgium and stuff like that. This guy knew all kinds of stuff, and he kind of gave me some advice where, I mean, his advice in the beginning was basically like, if you do what you're trying to do, like what you want to do, you're going to get sued and the website's going to come down, and like the whole like plan that you have, like it's not going to work. So like pseudonyms started popping up, and Mark became Mark B, and it's less like at this point, like I can say people's names. It's less important because they've already been published.
Right.
Can I ask, because I've noticed that most cults tend to have like a main narrative, and that's why they're able to convince people to do things like penis washing, for example. Can you give us a little right?
Can you tell me what that is?
How do we get to the part where you're convincing people to wash your penis?
Yeah, the penis washing thing. I guess like I mean the simplest explanation is like in this world, like if you step into this world, like Mark is God. Mark is Jesus. He is like he has a connection to the Christian God that nobody else in the world has. Like that's the selling point. Like you want to know God, you want to go to heaven, like you are faithful. Like this is the only way, is through this one guy who knows everything and controls whatever. But the reality is that he's a con artist and he sexually assaults people. Like the whole washing thing is like it's this perversion of kind of
washing the feet
story from the Bible about like washing feet, yes, and it's like, oh, but instead like we wash you and we want like this seed of God, like, and then you're gonna wash me when you're done. Like it's not like it's not a religious. Obviously, like if you've never heard of this before, there's a reason for it, because like it's something this guy like likes to do because he's a criminal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
we're talking about like the reason I was asking, because I was trying to get to whether a lot of these cults are Christianity based, and so there is some connection where they kind of like put themselves up as God. Like you have to convince people. It's not, hey, I'm Mark, wash my penis, because that's not going to fly.
No, that wouldn't work.
Right. So you have to be like, I'm Mark, but also Jesus, wash my penis. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, well.
So, so have you been able to get all of the information, like the theological understanding that the cult espouses?
Yeah, like Mark has like scripture that, and I have like he made some mistakes in the past where the two like massive mistakes he made were like, hey, I'm God, like what I'm saying is going to be like the next book in the Bible, so like record everything I say. And like, hey, I'm going to share with you like the new scripture. So now like here's like here's a chapter of the Bible you've never read before, and I wrote it because I'm related to God.
The Joseph Smith.
And some of that stuff is out there. So like I have like I've seen what he's written and what he's saying. I mean, it's very confusing. It's this mixture of like there's all this like Jewish theology in it, lots of Hebrew. They don't celebrate Christmas or Easter, but they celebrate Pentecost. They're it's like, you know, Jesus was Jewish. So
Do they call him
like,
Jesus in this cult, or do they say another
no,
name?
Jesus
like,
isn't Jesus. You're not allowed to say the word Jesus. So something that I sort of learned recently. Like, you know, it's like they have like different words.
right.
And
Well, I ask because there's been this huge uptick on TikTok. I'm getting it all the time on my For You page of like Torah observant or Hebrew roots Christians, which are people who follow the Mosaic law. And one of the things that they say is you don't call him Jesus, you call him by his Arab or his Hebrew name is what they'll say a lot of times, even though it was Aramaic. But they'll call him Yeshua, and other ones will call him Yehoshua, and they're like 3 or 4 different names. They're like, this is what you call him, and they're all in disagreement. And I find that hilarious because Jesus is just a transliteration of the same name. It's just saying it differently.
It's ridiculous. I mean, I honestly think like when you look at this stuff, like it's extremely confusing. And it's very circular, and like when you read it, it comes back to the same like weird ideas with different words. Like I think it honestly, like this guy aspired to be a cult leader. He came from a cult before he showed up. It's intentionally
so that's L. Ron Hubbard-ish.
Yeah, it's like he's doing something like it's meant to be hard to understand, because then it's like, you know, he knows something that you don't know. He's got power, and you just like, well, man, this guy's got like crazy, like this guy knows the true words of God, and people try to wrap their minds around it. But in reality, it's just like bullshit. Like if you read it, you would just think it was like crazy bullshit, because
now I need to read it.
Right. I'm very curious because one of the things that we discussed right before we went live was about my personal interest and somewhat personal experiences with cult-like behaviors from a group that I was in. And so it interests me what drives otherwise seemingly normal people to join into these groups and to sort of submit themselves to these leaders who are asking them batshit crazy things. Like if someone just walks up to you on the street and tells you this stuff, you're like, get out of here, you're crazy. So there's a process. It doesn't start day one. You're going to wash my junk, you know, you lead people into it. There's a slow boil, as they say. You got to boil the frog, right?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that people who join cults, like it's about idealism. It's about like finding something that you're looking for, and there's just a predator who's gonna like destroy your life. You have no idea. But I mean, people join. I mean, people who joined Jonestown like wanted to get out of poverty and wanted to like have like equity in the world. Like they never ever thought they were going to be like sipping poison or feeding poison to their babies. Like they wanted like rights for their race. Like, and here was this guy who was like going to change the world. Like, I mean, if you look at like pretty much every cult, if you look at like the reason why people get involved in this stuff is that they have like, you know, they want to improve their lives, and somebody says they have an answer that is bullshit. And they don't realize it. And it's not because they're stupid. It's just like it just sounds so appealing to it. And you can imagine like how this could happen to anybody. It's not about intelligence at all. I mean, it's
and I think there's a common tendency to think that about people. Oh no, I'm much smarter than that. That could never happen to me.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is if you are idealistic about anything, there is somebody who could seize upon that and draw you in.
Well, this makes me think of a couple years ago. I did I retold the story of Waco, and when I was doing the David Koresh and the fire there, which was a slaughter, really. And when I was doing it, I read through his. He typed up the seventh seal, I think is what it was. And so he had typed up his new kind of revelation from God, his revealing what was written on the seventh seal in Revelation. Right. And the whole time I was reading it, I was going, this is some Joseph Smith stuff.
Yeah.
You know, this is some taking here and then giving an explanation to people that want that sort of explanation, if that makes sense. It's like that's why I think that the kind of Torah observant people that I've mentioned are going in that direction, is because a lot of times they don't feel good enough to, you know, like in the traditional Christian way of receiving grace. And so they feel they have to work for it. And so someone out there on TikTok or on YouTube or whatever told them, oh, well, you still have to follow the laws. And that gets them in, because then they have something to do in order to gain salvation. And so it's I think that's kind of, I've seen that a lot, is there's this very, it's like finding the need that people have and twisting it and writing it in such a way that it's palatable. I mean, David Koresh had people that went to Harvard living in his compound.
That's true. And I guess, like, I would say too, like, religion is the easiest way to get people involved in a cult, because you're talking about people who already have subscribed to something that, like, I guess I would say, like, is fantastical. Like, but not all cults are religious either. Like if you look at Nexium, like there's no God in Nexium. Like, it's about like self-improvement, and then you have these people who are, everybody's sleeping with the dude who runs it, Keith Raniere, and they're getting branded.
I was going to say, that's the one where they branded their initials. So Nexium's the one, it was a sex cult, and the leader put them through these like training modules. And as they would go through them, one of the things is that you would get this brand. And the brand was supposed to represent all of these different levels of like self-enlightenment that you had reached. But when you turned the brand on its side, it was actually the initials of Keith. I can't remember his last name.
Keith Raniere.
Yeah, he had branded his own initials into these women. And I mean, so it's like literally like professional women who are looking to like maximize their potential or maximize their, because the majority of the people who were in Nexium were women, and really hot women too, apparently. So,
but I mean, as we're having this conversation, it's just funny how many of these things that we've talked about before or noticed or studied all sound exactly the same. Like you're talking about Nexium, and I'm hearing operating thetans, you know, like I'm hearing the Scientology angle, which is self-help, and you learn these things until all of a sudden, Lord Xenu, where'd this come from?
Yeah,
I wanted to be a movie star, right? And so it's fascinating, but you started learning about the body. Did you name it the body, or is that what they call themselves?
No, I guess like, okay, so like if you went to Washington and somehow found, I mean, I don't think they're hiding right now, but like if you had gone to Washington a couple months ago and ran into these people and started joining the church service or whatever, you never would have heard the body. Like they didn't call themselves the body. They have changed names. Like every time they're about to be exposed, the script flips a little and things change. Like, you know, they moved from Alaska to Hawaii to now they're in Tonasket, and there's a sect in Australia. It's a crazy thing that like they just like split the scene, change their names, and they handle money. So like, you know, it used to be like legally called Sought Out, and then Sought Out dissolved, and then they were Veritas, and that dissolved, and then they had a new thing. But like in the court records, like when they were exposed, the first guy who talked said like, this is the body. Like they are called the body. And in court, when the cult was discussed, the lawyers called it the body. And like that's why I call it the body, and why it's sort of known as the body is because of like, you know, at the moment that this all almost came out like years ago, like the first survivor who spoke out was like very clear that like, this is the body. I am in the body, and that's my life is being destroyed.
Well, you say they've changed their name. That I don't know if you know about the Mother of God cult, but I'm not sure. They also rebrand themselves fairly regularly as well, as far as I know.
Well, Children of God have some new name. They're like the family something now. Like
Yeah.
it's
Well-
not uncommon for these kind of groups to, you know, rebrand because there's some shit on the internet or something. Somebody's talking that makes them not want to associate with the previous brand.
So you've said that they have these services. I'm curious, is Mark a smooth talker and a charismatic person?
Oh
or is
my
he-
God. Yeah. I mean, I have all kinds of like recordings of him. There's a bunch of recordings of him on like my TikTok and in the like mini doc I published and stuff like that. I mean, I always lead with the one where he's like, this is the first thing Jesus taught, sex, like in this sermon. And what's crazy about that clip is like if you play it like a little bit further, like you can hear the people in the church being like, oh yeah, like this makes sense, like just agreeing with him. And it's like, hey, like, you know, I literally I have taught it's silly, this is like super silly, but I have talked to like biblical experts about this, even though I knew the answer already. But the first thing Jesus preached was not had nothing to do with sex.
No.
No.
It's
Not even a little.
astounding. But he has the charisma. Like he has like he's got something that like, and you can hear it in some of his like speeches that have leaked, and just from people I know who have been in contact with him, like he is like, you know, he's a smart motherfucker. Like that guy he is talented and like charismatic, and there's a reason he's been able to get away with this shit. Like all this moving around to get away from people like me is very strategic, and it's kind of like brilliant. Like I mean, I think he's at the end of the road, but like it as much as I hate this guy, I have to like give him the credit of like he's got something, like he's got something special.
I think that's actually important because I think when we think of an evil character in our minds, we see this quintessential villain with clammy skin and a big long mustache, or they're going to be stupid or ugly, or there'll be some outward appearance that will let us know that that's a bad guy. And the thing is, they don't come packaged like that. They're handsome and charismatic and charming, and they make you feel good about yourself. That's why you go along.
Yeah.
And so it's like the devil has a flowering face, as they say.
I guess like charisma too is like I think some people get it wrong when they think like charismatic leader. Like some people like don't buy it because you see like videos of Charles Manson like on trial where like he's just being like a total psychopath, and you're like, how did this guy like ever charm anybody? But it's all about like what somebody there's like a connection there that exists with where charisma happens because it's something that appeals to you. It's like it's not like this universal thing. Like I think I don't know, like some people are charismatic in Hollywood, where like Jennifer Lawrence is charismatic, right? In a way that like appeals to like a huge broad audience.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not the same thing as like Charles Manson or Mark B's charisma. Like like the definite, like the words don't fit together. Like just the same way like the word cult implies that it's religious, and there are political cults. There are, you know, self-help cults like Nexium, like we talked about. Like
online atheist cults.
Language fails.
So I'm curious about some of, because you know you got to the point where you threatened Mitch McConnell to the FBI, and so I think it would be very interesting to hear what it is that got you this worked up. Because I mean, for even the penis washing is enough for me to be like, that's a cult. But you know, I've heard you talk about how some of these people you know, talk about the sovereign citizen language and view children as property and stuff like that. But could you tell me what, I mean, I'd love to know the context of penis washing and like how that is Like,
We're really focused on the penis.
no, well, I mean, I just wonder how it works as like a sacrament. Like, what are the different things that they view as holy, they view as just, or whatever that makes them worthy of
right.
the ire, worthy of being destroyed?
I mean, I guess like it's kind of personal, like to go through their doctrine and all the shitty things they do. Like I do that all the time, but I mean the reality of the situation kind of comes back to like being conned. Like I had tapes of a survivor laying out the entire story, talking about getting washed, talking about kids getting washed, talking about like all the criminal stuff that was going on. And the person who gave it to me was like, hey, like, just so you know, this guy who said this story, like, this is really compelling, but like he like rapes his kids basically. So it was like, well, that's like useless. Like he's a pedophile. I was told he was a pedophile basically. And as a journalist, especially like an alt weekly journalist, like in Minnesota, like I'm not going to waste my time talking to this guy, calling some person, getting information. And then it turns out like this guy is raping his kids. Like no way was I going to touch that. So like I spent years like thinking, this story was bullshit because of this guy was not credible whatsoever. And then it sort of dawned on me after I talked to experts and was talking to psychologists and hearing cult stories like every day because of like the work I was doing, that like, oh man, like this guy, like I am 99% sure like this is blackmail. And it just worked.
Yeah.
And I talked to his kids and it turned out like I guarantee like after talking to his kids, like they were not molested by their dad. Like that was just a bullshit story. And I was fucking furious when I found out that like I had been sitting on this information since 2018, just sitting on my hard drive while this guy is like, well, the cult leader, Mark B, is like literally molesting people and destroying people's lives and taking all their assets and like separating wives from children and placing them in Australia. Like when I actually found out what was going on, it was like, I mean, it was a vendetta. Like,
you felt like you had a duty.
Yeah, like I feel some people like are like, oh my god, it's so honorable, like what you did or whatever. But it's like, hey, like like if you knew the whole story, like the reality is like I was pissed off, and I'm just not I'm not the kind of person you should fuck with in that scenario. I mean, then you have like the Mitch McConnell tape and stuff like that, and then like the reality of the situation in Tenasket right now, where I don't know if these people can go to the grocery store without like hearing something like, but it is like it is about like stopping abuse, but it's also like they just like they fucked with me enough that I was like, oh, I'm just never ever gonna let this go. Like this goes until the end, and no matter what.
Right.
They poked the bear.
Yeah. Sometimes you get the bear, sometimes the bear gets you.
That's right.
So the kids, because I've seen the clips of these arrests, which unfortunately I couldn't cut down in time. But there's a lot of talking about children as property. There's the sovereign citizen who try to use the Articles of Confederation instead of the Constitution with policemen to tell them what they can or can't do. But tell us a little bit about that, because you just said children sent to Australia, which sounds like human trafficking to me.
Well,
so I'm very curious.
Sent to Australia who left her kids behind.
Okay.
She left her 2-year-old behind and moved to Australia. She had 5 other kids. I mean, trafficking, like I honestly think like what's going on with I mean, like, okay, so like on Twitter, I'm free Mel Parker. On Instagram, I'm free Melissa Parker. Melissa Parker is the woman wandering around Australia on this crazy goose chase that in reality is just like a reason that nobody will ever find her. Like she's in Australia and another guy's in Australia, like recruiting and doing all this wild shit. But the reality is like they're bad for business. That's why they're in Australia.
Right.
It's such an outrageous thing that that that's one of the motivating factors of why I do what I do. But I guess the sovereign citizen thing is like new. Like I had no idea about this. I didn't know what sovereign citizens were. I didn't know about this guy who founded it. David Straight is his name. He makes like YouTube videos, and he's very much like aligned with QAnon. Like he talks about like children in tunnels while he's talking about how to escape the government. And then you just find this universe of the sovereign citizen thing where people are cutting up their driver's license and putting fake tabs on their car, and they live as if there is no government. They're not U.S. citizens, and the law cannot touch them, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's totally ridiculous. And the tape of Chris getting arrested and the other guy getting arrested at the same time, like I think that might be like the best thing on the internet to show like how law enforcement will deal with you saying you don't consent to being arrested,
Right.
or calling your kids
That's
property.
all my experience with the sovereign citizen movement is videos of people trying not to get arrested by claiming to be sovereign citizens, and they always get arrested. So guys,
I mean, it's
that
funny.
one's not going to work.
Like the when Stewart gets arrested in that video, and he goes, they go, "You're under arrest." The police, there's 4 cops around him. "You're under arrest." He goes, "No, I'm not." And it's like I think it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, you are. Another thing that I find funny is how this is attached to this whole idea. The idea of we're saving the children is attached to people who are abusing children.
Yeah.
And so it's always
insane.
there always seems to be this sort of like projection. Like if you have some kind of like Republican congressman who's really, really against gay people, they always find him in a hotel room with a boy that he rented. So whenever people are like super, super against something or like really championing a cause, I've always got a feeler in the back of my head saying, yeah, I feel like that's the shit that you're into. And that's why you're so vocal about it, because you're like, don't look at me, look at them over there, so I can keep doing what I'm doing, sort of undisturbed.
And I guess like I should make it clear that like I talked to a lot of people, and that nobody, I mean, these kids were really young. They were 3 and 6. And nobody has ever come to me and said anything about like sex or molestation with them. Like, but I will say like there's a reason the police rescued those kids, and it's not because there's a reason. I haven't put it on the internet, but like those kids didn't get taken away. Like that guy had full custody of those kids legally, and they got taken. Like, and there's a reason for that. And like the people who like think he's like innocent or like subscribe to the sovereign citizen thing or believe this like fucking lawsuit that he's filing, that I mean his supporters are gonna they're not gonna, it's not gonna age well to support that guy, and there are people that do.
Right.
But I should make it clear that it's like with those kids for sure. Like it's not about like them being raped or something like that.
Right. Okay. I guess I had conflated that the previous group we're talking about with the sovereign citizens. I guess I felt they were connected in the story.
They are. I mean, they are connected.
They are connected. Okay.
I mean, the reality is like the sovereign citizen thing. They're in deep red Washington. Like you go to Eastern Washington, Northern Washington, you are in like, I mean, it is like Ruby Ridge red.
Right.
And the sovereign citizen thing, like I'm not saying anything bad about like people's political views. What I'm saying is like it's easier to recruit people with this sovereign citizen thing where you can live above the law than it is to be like, hey, I'm Mark and I'm Jesus Christ.
Right.
Like,
right.
It's just it's a recruiting tool that just went way too far and like blew up because like I was waiting for it and there was body cam footage, and then as soon as that body cam footage came out, like hundreds of thousands of people we're watching.
And it's also, like you said earlier, there is sort of a idealism that needs to be attached, because you can't just walk up to any like regular person. They have to already be subscribing in some way to something that's a little bit fantastic, because if they don't have that suspension of disbelief, they won't go along with the rest of it. So you do need to sort of like target people who are willing to make that leap of faith. And that's why
Yeah, and
religious
it's like,
people are such an easy target.
people think of politics in sort of the same way they think of faith sometimes. Like,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
the reality is like it's extremists. Like I can call like the body like it is a cult, right? But it's also just like it would be just as appropriate to call them like just like a radical extremist religious group in Washington. Like just the same way it's like, you know, we call ISIS terrorists, and that's an appropriate word. They are terrorists. They're also a extremely far right religious cult. Nobody quits ISIS ever. There's literally not a story on the internet. You've never seen an interview with like a former member of ISIS as because they're in a religious cult where you can't leave. Like I guess I mean that might be like going a little too far with a
Well, the best you
analogy.
get, no, it's not a bad analogy. The best you get with that is a wife of a jihadi who escapes, and she chooses the lives. Usually, in this case, she chooses the lives of her children over her devotion to her husband or her devotion to the cause. And so that is very often the case with other escapees of religious cults, or, you know, any kind of cult in general, is that it's a woman who is valuing the life of her children, her mother, her sisters, whatever it is, who flees. And oftentimes the lowest members in the society, which are generally women and children, are the ones who end up bringing down these major cults, or these very powerful men who are the leaders of these cults will almost always be tripped up and brought down by the people that they think cannot touch them. And I think that that's sort of like a delicious little irony about the world.
That's an important point too. That like women and children always get it worst in these scenarios. Like if the body was going on and it was just like some men's group and these people's bank accounts were getting destroyed and there was penis washing or whatever, like no one would, it would be some weird shit that was totally legal because nobody's ever said no.
Right.
And
if dudes want to wash each other's junk, who am I to get in the way, you know?
Yeah, I mean whatever, like people can do whatever they want, but it's like we're talking about like coercive control. Like people have been coerced into these situations. They don't they don't want to have their bodies, they don't want to wash this guy. Like that's his sexual perversion, and it's really like esoteric to have that kind of desire. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
I just really want to wash some penises.
Yeah.
So let me ask you. So you call the FBI. You want them to take the information. What do you think would be the appropriate charges for Mark and for this cult? Like, what do you think would be the appropriate response?
Well, I will say like cult stories are. This is how cult stories work. Is like, you know, Keith Raniere and Nexium had a sex cult.
Yeah.
And was like branding women with his like that's the reason why he's in prison. Those were not the charges. You know, it was racketeering, and you know, and that's what's going to happen with Mark, I think, is like, you know, the sex stuff is really fucked up, and there are stories that involve people under the age of 18, which makes it way worse. But like nobody says no when they're in that situation, so it's not necessarily against the law. Like what's going to bring down Mark isn't like molesting people, because like he's created a situation where you know, he can legally say like, well, we were all just doing this thing together and they were cool with it. But he's sitting on a pile of dirty money. Like that guy bought this house with $300,000 cash in Tonasket. It's the money is bullshit. Like he hasn't worked a job in 20 years. Like I've got financial records of other people in the cult like buying huge sales in cash. Like now everything is cash because they're sovereign citizens. And it's like this property that Mark bought for $300,000 in 2018 is worth $1 million, maybe more.
Yeah.
And it's like all the improvements like that make it worth $1 million. Nothing's up to code. There's no permits. It's all dirty money. It all comes from like extorting people. Like that's gonna be the end of his story, in my opinion and my dreams. But I don't think he's ever gonna go down for any of like the sex stuff. I think that's just the way like our legal system works. Like
it's like they never got Al Capone for making illegal alcohol. What they got him for was like tax evasion.
Yeah, this happens.
Because
Organized crime is the same thing,
right.
you know.
It's something about his suits, like he had too many suits or something. It's like, how can you prove where you got the money to buy this stuff? And he couldn't because, you know, he was a rum runner. So yeah, that reminds me a lot of the Capone thing.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I think if you just look like historically at, you know, somebody who's doing the stuff that Mark is, I just know that like if I'm the IRS and I like Mark's version of the story is that like he invested some money and God has returned him like with all this like praise and new assets. I talked to a member who recently got out who heard Mark say that he had donated like 30 cars to like needy people. It's like an absurd story that isn't, I had to tell this person like, okay, like, you know, I know he says that, but like that never, ever, ever happened. Like he doesn't do anything for himself. If he gives something to somebody, it's so that he can exploit them in the future. Like this is what a cult leader is. Like there is no like chapter of the body where like Mark is doing good shit because he's an abusive narcissist. Like he's a malignant narcissist. You could also just call him a psychopath.
That's something to mention, though, the love bombing, which is something you just touched on a second ago. When you first enter these groups, they bomb you with love. They make you feel so accepted, like more accepted than you have ever felt in your life by your peers, your family. And as a result of that trust they build from loving you so hard, you tell them things. You tell them the things you're ashamed of, the things you've done in your past. You unburden yourself to these people that you sincerely trust. And then they've got dirt on you. And they can at any point turn around and tell you, well, if you don't go along, I know about that thing you did that one summer. Yeah. And they've got you by the short and curlies. You're done at that point.
Oh my God. I worked at the Apple store and I just realized Apple is a cult.
I'm not Google Apple is a cult. You will. There are results will populate.
I am kind of somewhat joking, but the moment that you walk in for your first shift at an Apple store, every single worker in the store claps you in, like applauds you for coming into the store. So that means all the customers do it as well because they're like, what's going on? And then when you leave, they clap you out when you quit.
Wow.
And so I'm just saying Apple Inc. love bombs their employees. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, you can find like examples of like culty shit like everywhere. I mean, like coercive control, love bombing. I mean, you find it in like the advertising industry, obviously. There are like people are. I mean, the big thing right now that people are starting to realize, like, whoa, like this has all the features of a cult is multi-level marketing. Has really like people are starting to realize
Lululemon.
Like, every single feature of a cult, like when you break it down, like is happening with these people selling like makeup and stuff that they're just like on some like they're just nothing good is going to happen. Like it's like you know, every time I see somebody talk about like, oh, I'm selling this thing on the internet now on Facebook or whatever, I'm like, ooh, like sorry, like because I've talked to survivors of like multi-level marketing, people who got into multi-level marketing and consider themselves survivors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to those people. They exist.
There's at least one woman on TikTok that I saw who was with Lululemon. And when she got out, I think they did a documentary on her, actually.
I've heard so much about Lululemon. So much.
But I mean, it's just so wild to hear. Because I mean, like my joke, if I could have fit it in there, was like, but Syran, have you tried Peace and Calming Oil? It's a life changer.
It will change your life.
So a friend of mine's sister, she just started selling these like press-on nail things that like it's a multi-level marketing scam. It is totally a cult, but the product is so good. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I know you're in a cult, but I get a discount, right?
Well, that's the thing, is like sometimes like cults will have, I mean, I guess like people's it's all about like what the intention of the group is, like the people who are in charge. Usually it's a charismatic male, like but there's all kind, I mean, there's tons of like women who've run cults before. It's like you just have somebody who's gonna do whatever they want to achieve their goal, and like if people's lives get dismantled along the way, they just do not give a shit. That is like the number one characteristic of every single cult, and you see that in multi-level marketing. Like like maybe sometimes the product is good. Like in Nexium, they cured, like they had this, they helped people get over Tourette's. Like if you watch the documentary, The Vow on HBO, like I mean they were doing some shit that was like that had value. And there, some people people might sell nails that like press on nails that are like pretty cool and better than what else is out there. But like if the person at the top is enslaving somebody to sell them, like it's very unethical, and you should not fuck with the nails.
So like the not the body, the People's Temple, Jim Jones, one of the things he would do to keep people in was he would have them write a confession letter and say the things that they did, horrible things, and have them sign it, and he would hold that over their heads. And then in Scientology you have auditing, where you sit down holding these two stupid cans while someone talks to you, and they record you telling every bad thing you've done. Is there as far as you know, is there some sort of equivalent in the body?
Absolutely. I'm 100,000% positive that like in the body, like you have to repent. It's repentance is what Mark will say. Like you say everything that you've done. Like everybody that gets that is out of the body leaves penniless, and they are terrified of Mark Bissett, because not only does he just get you to like say whatever you did when you were a teenager or something, like he wants to know your sexual secrets. Like if you're in a couple, you have to say, like, he's like, explore the bedroom, like tell me what goes on in the bedroom. Like this guy he just collects dirt. I mean, that's the reason why when I first entered this story, and like I knew it was real, I knew kind of what was happening, but it was like, oh my god, like there's the guy who's talking is a child molester. Like okay, he wasn't a child molester. Like the cult like were clever enough to like they just manipulated the shit out of that guy, got him to like write text messages, like got him to do like he okay, this is the craziest fucking brainwashing story I've ever heard, is that they told this guy he confessed something, like he had nothing to confess about his sexual sins, so he told Mark what he thought about when he jerked off. This is a real story.
Oh, honey.
And Mark wanted to get rid of him because he wanted his wife, and he said, man, you have to go to the police and tell them what you did. And this motherfucker walked into a police station, found a police officer, and was like, this is what I think about when I'm masturbating. And made a record with the cops. Like that happened in real life.
Bro.
And obviously you can't imagine how surreal that experience must have been for the police officer. Like, what are you, Like,
why are you telling me this?
What's going on? They don't know this guy's in a cult. They just, I mean, who I can't imagine. Like, I've never been able to find. Like, I know there is a report out there. I know it exists because there's no way a cop didn't talk about it. I just have, like, it's one of those records. There's a lot of records that I need to pull, but I guess that's an example of like how far the gathering information on people and blackmailing them, and just like Jim Jones was getting those letters to blackmail people, like that happens in the body. Like, I know a guy who I've never talked to before, who I don't think any reporter has talked to yet, who like lost millions of dollars, lost his wife, can't communicate with all his kids anymore, and he's not saying anything. And it's like, man, with everything that's going on, like, he's obviously aware of the situation that's happening right now and hasn't said a word. And I guarantee,
what do they have on him?
Because he said some shit to Mark, and he's terrified.
Yeah.
I will say this to people ever caught in a situation where somebody has something on you. You should take David Letterman as your example. David Letterman was cheating on his wife, and somebody found out about it and tried to blackmail him. So David Letterman went on air and said, hey, guess what? I'm cheating on my wife, and took all the power away from this person by admitting this thing. Nobody gave a shit. Not one
and
person
they wanted
gave a
millions
shit.
of dollars. They were like,
Right.
$2 million, or you're
They
willing to expose you.
They asked his wife, they're like, so are you going to leave him? And she's like, I'm David Letterman's wife. Like, I'm not going to leave him because of this. Like, no.
I mean,
and it's like, you know, that
it's really hard with this story because, like, there are like there's a bigger story that's going to come out that features like a bunch of people I've never talked to. I'm excited for it. It's going to change things. But like even the people I've talked to and people willing to come forward, like they want Mark gone. Like they want this situation to be over. They want the abuse to stop. But it's like, man, you really can't tell this story without like mentioning sex, and nobody like really. I mean, if you're just somebody who went through some trauma, you don't want to be labeled like, yeah, I was like in this, what people are going to call like a sex cult.
Right.
It's even hard to come to grips with the fact that you were a victim. Even if you know something's messed up and you leave and you get out of it, you don't start to think of yourself as a cult member or the victim of a cult for a very long time.
Well, I mean, and this makes me think of, there are certain people that we've heard, I can't tell you the name, but he was talking about a group that he was in. One of the first things they made him do was, and it was unbeknownst to him, was to have sex with an underage woman or a girl. And they filmed it. And so, you know, at that point he couldn't do anything without, and he eventually did, thank God. But like he was convinced that he was going to be in jail for the rest of his life because of something they tricked him into and got dirt on him so that he couldn't rat on them. It just, so much cult-like behavior everywhere.
That reminds me, I so want to ask. You called the FBI and told them you were going to kill a government official. How are you not in prison? Tell us that.
The First Amendment, I guess. Like, I mean, I thought I was going to be in a world of shit. Like, and I wasn't. I think the reality is, like, before I called the FBI and said I was going to assassinate Mitch McConnell, I had called a bunch of times in the last few days. I had called law enforcement in Pennsylvania. I was talking to the cops in Alaska. I was talking to cops in Washington. Like, I was making phone calls all the time. And the FBI it's pretty easy for them to figure out like what you've been doing like on your phone and the internet or whatever. Yeah. So like when this became a thing, when I said what I was going to do, they pretty easily like went back to what I was actually calling about in the first place and realized, I mean, they knew they weren't going to arrest me and throw me in prison and send me to Guantanamo or whatever, because like it was obvious to them that like, I mean, and if you listen to that call, like I'm talking about like, I've got marijuana in my house, like please arrest me. Like it's obvious that like that's
hear
not
how
what I'm
you're-
actually calling about, you know,
You
like
can hear how you're thinking in like live time and go, yeah, and I'm gonna sell it to little school kids. Like you're coming up with it in the moment. I mean, I could hear that in your voice, so I'm pretty sure the woman on the phone is like, yeah, okay.
yeah. I mean, I wonder, like, I bet you being a receptionist at the FBI, like, I bet you hear like,
Yeah.
because it's just like an open line that's open to every citizen in the country. I mean, I'm sure you hear some wild, like I'm sure this was like probably the craziest thing that happened that day, but it might
Right.
not be the craziest thing that I would almost guarantee it's not the craziest thing she's
No.
ever heard.
It's
Not by a
maybe
long
not even
shot.
that week.
My
So
I have a family member that works for the local police department, and the things that she hears people call in about, my favorite was a guy called the cops because the trees were being too loud.
Trees were
And
being too loud.
the trees were being too loud. They sent an officer out to talk to that guy. So like on the day to day, I'm sure that was the least crazy thing she probably had heard.
So let me ask you, as far as you know, has the FBI looked into him at all, or do I have to call them and tell them that I'm going to punch Lindsey Graham and her ladybugs?
Like, okay, so there are stories. I've heard stories that Mark has been investigated by the FBI before I called the FBI. And one of his relatives told me that they saw a badge at some point.
Okay.
But it's one of these stories that's just like impossible to confirm, because like Mark likes to spin stories about how there's like a conspiracy against him, right?
Of course.
So like I honestly think like the stories of like the FBI investigating Mark and all this like these conspiracies against him, like I think they all come from Mark.
Yeah.
Well,
who was it? Jim Jones faked his own shooting.
Oh wow.
Yeah, people do wild stuff to I mean, Charles Manson was like, there's a race war coming and like all the black people are going to kill us and everybody else.
And we're going to be the good white ones that they let stay.
And like, because of me, we're going to be saved. Like, that's a conspiracy, obviously. And Mark has like his own conspiracies that are like about, and I think the reality is that like, it might be bullshit. I mean, I think the FBI is going to investigate him, but I think his real hurdle is going to be the IRS.
Yeah.
So if anything, it bolsters his legend about himself. If an FBI agent does show up knocking on the door to investigate him, to his followers and the people around him, that will bolster his legend.
Yeah, and then who knows what the fuck happens? Like, I mean, they're already sort of like cornered. They own basically a mountain in Tonasket. It's a huge property with all kinds of illegal buildings on it. Like, who knows what? I mean, if they
you said they were
somebody
cornered.
Could jump through my window right now.
That's what I want to ask you about. You said they are cornered. Cornered animals are quite dangerous. Have you been threatened? Are you worried? Like, are you okay?
Been threatened, I guess. Like, yeah. Like, weird stuff has happened. In the beginning, I got some stuff, and recently, I got some stuff that is disturbing and obviously directed at me. But the reality is, like, if a cult member jumped through the window and shot me in the head right now, like, Mark's operation would be over. Like, nobody on Earth,
we'd have it on video.
We'd have it on video right now. Like nobody would have any question, like, who was responsible for this. The cult would be over. Mark would be in prison. It's like Syran wins. Like, I just don't. I don't know what they are. I'm not afraid of them because they threaten people they threaten people with like the most fucked up shit I've ever heard. They do that. It's real.
Give me an example.
But like nobody, there's no bodies. You know, I have Mark on tape like saying this guy is gonna die. Like, he dies now. But the guy is like he car mechanic in Alaska. Like, he's not dead. Like, I mean, if he wants to kill me, like,
Follow through, Mark. Come on.
yeah, whatever. Like, I think he's like, I think he got empty threats. If they're not empty, like, come at me, like, motherfucker.
Right.
Like, I don't care.
Mark, you ignorant slut, just get it over with.
Yeah.
We're not impressed, Mark. Not impressed. That's I am sorry to hear that they are bothering you over it, though, and we'll pray for your safety in that regard, because these, like you said, a cornered animal can be quite dangerous. So it's like, yeah, maybe he's kind of a bitch and he doesn't really follow through, but at the same time, you've got him in a position where he needs to, lash out for self-preservation.
Well, self-preservation is an important word. Like I don't think, like, one of the reasons why I'm like do your worst, is my opinion, is that, like, nothing is more important to Mark than keeping this running. Like, that's
right.
Like, this is the most important thing in his entire life. Like, and he's careful, he's smart as fuck. Like, I mean, he could get out of this some way. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. He's got a 94-year-old woman with him. I don't know how he's going to run. And one of the members has, like, court dates that prevent him from leaving Tonasket. But, like, I don't think he wants the story to end ever. I think at any cost, like, and it would be too high of a cost to get rid of me, because then everybody in the world, he'd be like one of the most famous cult leaders of all time. Like, he doesn't want that. Like, he wants the system to keep going.
That reminds me of Warren Jeffs, the FLDS guy, from the Keep Sweet, Obey and Pray recent documentary. Although he is in prison, he continues to release messages to the people who still, and there are thousands of them still, who remain on the compounds. And so even though, like, there's been this huge investigation, even though this guy is going to be in prison for the rest of his life, he still wants to maintain that mental control over people. It's, like, really important to him.
Yeah, there's no, like, you don't switch it off. Like, when right. the reality is, like, when we're kids, like, we are told this lie that, like, everybody has good in them. Like, look for the good in somebody. That, like, I've talked to a person with a PhD in social psychology told me this. Like, the reality is, like, some people are not good, and all that matters is them. Like, they're just, like, there is nothing outside of their, like, narcissistic world at all. It doesn't exist. Like, they cannot function without, like, their world being at the center. So that's why you have, like, I mean, if you can listen to Charles Manson's tapes when he was interviewed by journalists, I mean, any cult leader in prison, like, it doesn't stop. Like, it's not like I found Jesus and I repent and, like, I admit that I did something bad. Like, I've literally never, ever, ever heard, I study cults all the time. I've never, ever heard a cult leader go, yeah, what I did was fucked up and it was bad. And I was guilty. And I promise, like, I'll never do that again. And it was horrible. I've never, ever, ever heard a scenario that ends like that. Ever.
No, they'd rather kill thousands of their followers in some cases.
Yeah, Jim Jones, like, when the end was near, like, it was like, I'm pulling the plug, and, like, you drink this, or there's guys with machine guns that are waiting for you.
Yep. What was compelling about that story is that there were people in the crowd who were arguing with him, who were, trying to assert, hey, maybe we don't kill the kids, just like maybe we leave them here. And he's like, nope, they're going to come and they're going to mow down all of these kids with machine guns. So you better kill them first. Yeah.
And then crazy, like, there's tapes, like the Jim Jones was taping, like, everything that was going on, like, on audio. And, there's, like, music from the compound in Jonestown that's, like, come out. But at the moment when everybody is drinking poison and it's the end of their lives and it's recorded, he is talking about himself and saving, like like they're after me, like we have to do this, like, or like it's, you know, I'm gonna be like God. It's about God and it's about Jim. Like
Yeah.
it's you know, who in the world would ever do that? Like watching mothers feed poison to their children.
Yeah.
In
And there
service
were
of him.
syringes.
It's insane.
Mhm, mhm. And yeah, those tapes are extremely difficult to listen to because you do hear people trying to reason with him, even though they're in this like slavish devotion to this idea. There's still that part of their brain that's fighting for life. And
Mhm.
some people, they found them with bullet wounds, they found them with injection sites. Not everybody went willingly. And so he
No.
had to like order like executions in service of himself. And so there is like, yeah, that when that extreme narcissism is involved, it's like all of you are in service of me. It's not just me, me, me. It's like you are me too. And you
Mhm.
need to serve me. It's, you know, I you know, personally, I don't think it would be really hard for the average person who does have empathy for his fellow man to understand that kind of like self-absorption. And in the tapes, one of the interesting things I picked up on, I listened to the tapes pretty recent, a couple months ago, actually.
Okay.
He talks about the supreme being over and over and over again. And he wants his followers to believe he's talking about God, something outside of himself.
Mhm.
But when you listen linguistically to the things that he's saying, he's the supreme being.
Mhm.
He's what you're serving. I'm what you're serving. You're going to do this for me. And you know, when you listen to it in hindsight, far away from it, not as a member of that cult, yeah, you do see how the crowd plays into that role as well, because everybody who's speaking up, the crowd around them is shouting them down too. So it's not just Jim Jones convincing them of this; it's all the other people around you
Yeah.
too, being
Well,
like,
I mean,
"You're
it-
betraying us."
Yeah, it makes me think of Stalinism. Like if you look at Stalin's Russia or the Juche over in
Or
North Korea.
Mao.
Yeah, but like it's one of the clearest examples is Kim Il Sung, Kim Jong Il, and Kim Jong Un.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
have, and this is they got it from the Soviet Union, but they have these let's tell on each other times, and so
Yes.
they
Yes.
have their people, and they have everyone watching everyone else. They have I mean, this is like the truth of the matter is that these cult like what's the word, cult,
It's a cult system. I mean, it's
yeah,
like
cult system, these strategies
Psychology.
have been
Mhm.
used on mass amounts of people,
yeah.
and it's wild to think about.
And you're talking about something too, where like the language fails. Like something that I tell people sometimes that just like I feel like people don't understand is like, okay, Jim Jones, that is the second largest loss of American lives in history.
Yeah.
The first, the biggest amount of like human lives in some tragedy was there was this religious fanatic in Afghanistan who convinced these people to end their lives for God and
Mhm.
him, to serve him and destroy the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it is accurate to say like he's a terrorist, like Osama bin Laden, he's a terrorist. The more you look at it and the religion and why people came to it and what he was doing and how he was manipulating people, like 9/11 is a fucking cult story.
Well, and
Um,
it's
and
not
most
hard.
people, I feel like just pass that by, like, oh yeah, like this horrible thing happened. There's no explanation for it. It's like, hey, there's a lot of explanation for it because this happens on micro levels all the time.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, and
Mhm.
it's not hard to understand because, like 9/11, what Osama bin Laden said he did this for is like it's not like there are bad reasons for it. Like his explanation was what Bush Senior did in Iraq and the sanctions in Iraq and all of this. I mean, it's like yeah, he
Well,
was
yeah, and
able
then you
to
pull God
rally
into
people
it though.
to
Like you got to
right,
remember, like
absolutely.
God is like big factor here.
No,
Mhm.
absolutely. But at the same time, he could point to physical realities
Yeah,
that hurt these
Yeah.
people.
totally.
I mean,
There-
you can look at it the same thing as what Hitler did with the Treaty of Versailles, and he found a common enemy that everyone could hate because their
and
lives
people
sucked
were
because of this.
suffering. Yeah. It makes me think of that movie Syriana, where they portray this young boy. His family is blown up by a bomb, by presumably like a U.S. laid bomb. He's, on his own now. His parents have been killed. He's in deep grief. He's in poverty. And then the Islamic school nearby, they feed them, they clothe them, they love them. The love bombing again.
Mhm.
They love them. They make a family for them where their family had been destroyed and said, look at this enemy. Look what they've done to you. What wouldn't you do to get back at them? Don't you love us? Don't we love you? And it all comes back. It is very much so. I'm putting it together as I'm talking. This is very much a cult psychology that operates with these jihadis that they employ.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. That's
bringing up like North Korea. That's I feel like that's an important thing that people miss all the time when we think about the situation over there is pretty fucking unusual. What's going on over there, and it's not diplomacy has failed. Something is gone very wrong, and it has to do with a megalomaniac who sought power. And it's a generational, it just happens over and over again.
Did you ever see that video? There's a video of North Korea where they brought in doctors to give people cataract surgery. And so these people are waiting in line for hours and hours and hours to get this cataract surgery. And after they get it, they're so grateful for the gift of sight that they've been given, that they're praising the leader. Oh, thank you, dear leader. Thank you, dear leader, with tears in their eyes. There's a sincerity there. Because their lives suck so effing much that when you do get this little scrap of something, it means so much to you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I thought of North Korea early on because we were talking about what was it? Oh, that we were talking about Mark and how I asked if he was charismatic, and you were like, yeah, and Jessica went on about how it's bad to think of these people as just these mustache swirling villains or crazy or neurotic or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what has happened in North Korea. People think that Kim Jong-il is a joke because Kim Jong-il made this whole story about how he was born on Mount Pictou on this specific night, and he was able to remember his birth and all of these every time he plays golf he does 18 holes in one, and they're like, oh, he's crazy.
I love that.
No, he is. Well, he wrote all of the operas before other people, and he's written Academy Award winning movies, but he's not
I fucking love those stories. I'm sorry.
Right. He's not crazy though. These are some of the most evil people in the world.
Yeah,
they're calculated and they're smart. And every time we pretend that they're crazy or stupid or weird, we're giving them the power to do what they want.
Yeah, it misses the boat.
Wild. Yeah, sorry. I am somewhat passionate about North Korea.
No, I mean, whatever direction, I think it is important though, because that topic has come up before when I talked to Alexandra Stein, who is a British. She's one of the top cult experts in the world. I got to talk to her because she knew what the paper that I used to work for, she knew about it because she lived in Minneapolis at one point. But I mean, North Korea came up, ISIS came up, there are these examples of authoritarians, charismatic authoritarian, going doing everything for themselves. Doesn't matter what happens to anybody as long as they're doing well.
Right. I do want to bring up this comment because it made me laugh, and our messages right before this episode made me happy. But Zach says, I think a modern example is the cult of Harless. He found a target that everyone hates, in this case, WAPO journalists, and they've been eating out of the palm of his hand ever since.
That's good. Yeah.
Yes, I have my own branch Camvidians, and they are my army. But no, it's so. That's the thing. When we started talking about cults, like I said, my mind almost immediately went to North Korea. Mm-hmm. It went to I mean, yeah, like every single, I mean, of course, there's
ISIS,
the easy, there's
Syria.
Marshall Applewhite, but like, look at how they've institutionalized this stuff.
Mhm.
It's incredible. But here's my question. Is there anything that we can do to help you in this story, or that our audience can
Oh,
do?
great question.
Because I mean, I all of this is horrifying, and we want to see this guy
We have
not
got
have
to
the
get
power he
this
does.
motherfucker.
Is
I
it
mean,
as simple as sharing your videos, or is there something I mean, I'm willing to call the FBI and tell them that I'm going to punch Lindsey Graham in his taint.
I mean
I'm
that is
willing to
fucking
do that.
hilarious. And like I have to say first, like when I saw what you did on the like that as somebody who called the FBI and said he was going to assassinate Mitch McConnell, you can't imagine how much I appreciated the thing that you're famous for. That I loved it. I guess I mean the reality is like what's going to defeat these people? What defeats cults is like education, like
Yeah.
knowing what a cult is, knowing what the warning signs are, like seeing like how people are exploited, believing survivors. Like as information comes out, like it should be spread, yes, but the reality is that like I think the average American like does not understand what a cult is, because I say that not to be patronizing, but like literally like when I first got these tapes, I was like, well, yeah, there was a cult in the 60s that was Charles Manson, and a cult in the 70s that was Jim Jones, and then you had this, and then
Colton-
Nexium.
Yeah.
Like I thought this was like a freak occurrence that happened every 10 years or something like that, where a bunch of weirdos like did some weird stuff and
Killed
then they
themselves
got
as the
in
Hailbot
trouble,
comic came around.
or they all died.
Right.
Like I just thought like it was like this impossible thing, and once I researched it and actually talked to some experts about it, it was like, oh no, this is just something that like happens all the time, because like certain people are narcissists, psychopaths who will do like anything to they'll do anything. It doesn't matter like if they hurt anybody along the way. Like there are people in the world who do not give a fuck, who are cult leaders. And like these are the worst people, and I feel like people like we just don't understand that as a society, that like the like when somebody is doing the kinds of things that Mark is doing, or when someone is like shipping people to some country far away to praise Jim Jones, or when people are going away on like a spaceship to behind Hailbop, like the person in charge, like it's not about somebody has been manipulated beyond belief, and people do that, and it's a real thing that I don't feel like we have a great understanding of. But this is like a common thing, and the cure to cults, the cure to situations like the one right now, is education, is to understand what this shit is, what's going on. And if people understood that, like this guy would already be toast.
I want to just hammer home something that you just said a second ago about the believing of survivors. I think that initially this story came to you from someone that you found somewhat unreliable. And I think these leaders rely on the fact that the people who might narc them out are going to appear unreliable. And they're relying on that. Women, children, people who are a little off, just, people who aren't going to be believed. And so go ahead.
I was just going to say, let me throw in the fact that, so I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but the movie Hacksaw Ridge, they when Mel Gibson was directing it, when the script was being written, they had to take out specific parts of that movie, because even though it happened in reality, it was so unbelievable that people wouldn't believe it if they saw it in the movie.
Sure.
And so a lot of times cult leaders, the wilder the things they do behind closed doors, the less likely the people are going to be believed when they say what happened.
Exactly. Like I put out like the last TikTok video I put out, I put a bunch of like little like 10-second like clips in there of people like talking about the story I was telling about the murder and how this like came to be. And like I could have put out like a 2-minute video and it would have got like way more views, but like I know what would happen. Like everybody in the comment section would be like, this is fucking bullshit. This never happened. Like this is like some hoax,
Right.
you know? Like
Well-
I tell people stories about the body or like what the past couple of years of my life have been like. And it's like, man, I'm glad I fucking record everything because like if I didn't, like nobody would believe any of this.
Right.
No, like it just sounds like I understand like I have gotten to a point like it kind of upsets me because like it's so like my work is important to me, but I've gotten to a point where it's like I just understand like, you know, there's this like disbelief.
Yeah. And
I just have to like it's always going to be there like no matter what happens. Like there's you know, Rolling Stone has an article that's going to come out soon, and I feel like that that's going to sort of change the dynamic of like I'm just some guy on the internet. Like if you look at the articles I wrote for City Pages, I mean I was a very cynical like I had like I don't know, like I wasn't writing about crime ever. Like I was a popular writer because I said like because I reviewed fish and I don't like fish or whatever, like, and that was funny. I mean, I did stunts all the time. I mean, I don't know if you listened to the interview I did with Jesse Ventura, but like, I mean, that was just like, this would make a funny article.
Let's see the body. Sorry.
And he's the body, yes.
Right.
Ironically.
Yeah.
So you think so that's one thing that we're interested in on this show is cults in some sense, because it's amazing to me personally that there are people who believe this stuff, but it's the same reason I was interested in true crime earlier in my life is how do these people reach these mental conclusions and then take these actions? And so people need to learn about cults. And so I'm more than happy to talk to more people who are in cults on the show and to share what you're doing and share let me pull up the website, thebodyintl.com, where
or
you have your
cultstories.com goes to the same place.
Okay.
Cultstories.com. Cool. But so if anyone is interested in helping Syran out, share his stories, go on his TikTok, share his TikToks, make stitches if they're short enough videos to do it. I did have to download one of yours to stitch it before we did this tonight.
I don't know what I'm doing on the internet. I'm always going to be bad at the internet.
Interestingly, real quick though, the guy who exposed the FLDL's cult and Warren Jeffs, he was a writer, but not a crime writer. And I think the fact that he also
John
didn't start out,
Krakauer, maybe.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. It sounds right. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
But he mentioned the fact that he was a writer, but he had never been a crime writer before. And I think it's interesting that maybe crime writers, they're in their niche, and so they're not thinking outside the box where a non-crime writer might. And so that might be why you guys are able to pick up on these things, because you're not crime writers, and that's actually a good thing.
Yeah, you know, it's an asset. Like I'll tell you right now, like I have made a ton of mistakes. Like if you went through all my tape, like I am embarrassed by like, I mean, when I was first interviewing people, I was like, hey, the lawyer did this, and somebody would correct me and be like, oh, they're called the prosecutor. And I was like, oh yeah, the prosecutor. Like that's how little I knew about crime when I started. Like, and it's just one of these things like that is just, it's an evolution. Like you couldn't go to school and study like how to find some cult in the middle of nowhere and expose them on the internet without like doing like a magazine story yourself. Like I'm never going to pitch a story ever. Like I'm not going to pitch the New York Times or something like that. Like I'm not going to do that. Like that's part of like what I'm doing is like other people put this out there. Like I make the stuff available and it exists, and then more shit happens. It's an internet thing. Like I thought it was smarter to use the internet than to pitch GQ. I had an opportunity to pitch GQ about the reporter stuff, and I turned it down to do this internet stuff, and I think it was like totally the right way to go. Like the internet is just like we live in a different world, and I can call Mark B, and he can't fucking sue me for a second.
It's interesting.
All I'm saying is I have some friends that work at the Washington Post, and I'll tweet at them.
I know the Washington Post. Yeah, I bet they love you.
But you know, wildly, Reddit solves a lot of cold cases, and I've heard that law enforcement will actually like give them cold cases because people on Reddit are relentless.
Yeah,
and
Reddit is awesome.
They'll zoom into the reflection in somebody's eyeball and determine where their location is based on the reflection in their eyeball. That's
Reddit,
wild.
Yeah. And there
Reddit's
was that documentary,
but
like
4chan's better.
Don't Fuck with Cats. Just like that.
Don't Fuck with Cats was amazing.
And that was like, I mean, just all like it's an internet mystery. Like this is kind of, I mean, it's not that, but because we know where everybody is and what's going on. But like that's like the power of the internet is stronger than the power of like an article that, you know, people are going to read and put down and it's over.
Right. Well, I think that I've never been more impressed with the internet. Do you remember a couple years ago, Shia LaBeouf was doing his performance art?
Yes.
And he put up that flag that said he will not divide us. And 4chan found it really quickly. And then he decided, I'm going to stump them. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the flag up on a flagpole. I'm going to point the camera towards the sky. There's no way they can find this. And those bastards over at 4chan looked at the sky, plotted the flight paths, cross-referenced those flight paths with flights in the United States and found out exactly where it was and replaced that freaking flag with the Trump hat.
Yeah, the internet is amazing. Like, you can't believe. Like, I mean that story. Like, obviously, like I said, when I had to come up with the crime, I decided it was going to be Mitch McConnell. Like my politics are kind of obvious, but like I appreciate that story as like it's kind of cool in a way. Like I don't like the Trump flag. Like obviously I don't like Trump, but like. That's fucking cool.
Shia off. The people who put it up might not have even been Trump supporters, but they knew it was going to hack him off.
Yeah,
so it's exactly what I would have done.
It's amazing what can be accomplished just like by talking to people on the internet. I mean, right now, like we're talking, right? Like some people are listening. Some people will listen tomorrow or whatever. Like I bet like most of the people who hear this have never heard a word about the body before. Like I'm not like some like nobody knows about me other than TikTok.
Yeah.
So
I am interested in cults, and I had not heard of the body.
No,
so
and people in Alaska keep commenting like, "I've never heard of this shit. What's going on?" It's like, well, here's this path of shit that I've been putting out forever, whatever. But it's like this is the internet. Like we found each other on the internet. I'm exposing this story to people on the internet, like literally right now.
Yep.
And in the future, like this will exist and people can watch it or listen to it or whatever. And it's like, you know, this is all like I don't know you. Like I had to like Google you. Like, I looked at both of your like Twitter accounts today just to make sure like you weren't like,
oh God,
QAnon.
I had a hell of a day on.
No, I'm just a troll.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I seriously, like, for a second when I saw like what I didn't see the video, I didn't see the whole thing. Like when I saw your profile and it was like, look at this fucking thing that happened on Tucker Carlson, I was like, oh no, because like a month before, like somebody was like, hey, I got this show and I've got a big audience, and I looked at it and it was all like he had all this Save the Children stuff, and he was gonna abuse this thing I've been working on. To like say like, oh, children got rescued, so like there's children in tunnels like under like I was just like no, I'm not gonna participate in that. But yeah, I mean, I guess like seeing what you did, like at first it was like, oh my God, I'm terrified of this, but I have to watch it anyway. And then when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, this is fucking cool. Like this is actually cooler than like saying I was gonna murder Mitch McConnell, because like millions of people saw this.
Yeah, dude, no, that's what was so crazy. I had So I'm anti-political in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I'm not
I get
interested
that.
in a lot of that shit. I just don't want to do it. But I had one friend of mine call me 4 times while I was in the black SUV, worried that they were going to take me off site and dump my body somewhere, going towards Tucker's show.
Oh.
Call me and say, "Hey, I need you to disparage Tucker on his show." And I was like, bitch, I'm about to have my face, my name, and I didn't know they were going to say comedian. Like, that's great. That's like so great. But 3.25 million people
Millions of
saw
people.
my face, heard
Literally.
me joke, and heard heard Tucker laugh.
It's the biggest audience in Fox News, which my grandparents, like, guarantee saw that. Like,
Yeah.
millions and millions of people watch Tucker Carlson. He's the biggest show on cable.
This is what's fun though, is I was out getting the mail, and a neighbor I had never seen before was walking her dog, and she goes, "Hey Cam, good job on Tucker the other night."
Oh, nice.
Wow,
And I
that
was
is
like,
super cool.
Yeah.
"Who are you?" But no, I mean that's the power of the internet, is you can make a joke and
Set
people can get fired. Set
off
fire.
a light.
Mhm.
I mean, you can use that, and then if you're me, like that was a conversation I had with someone the other day. Was, they said, "I don't know if I've ever seen anyone else do this the way you have." And I was like, "What do you mean?" They go, "Anytime someone's gotten in trouble for a retweet or something before, you never hear from the author, but you were cackling from the sidelines and everyone heard it."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "That is what I'm here for."
Yeah, and it's an
Perfection.
unbelievably, like, powerful tool that,
Freaking
like,
Bill Maher.
mhm.
I was my
That was
face was on
cool.
Bill Maher.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. Like,
What I loved about that was Bill told the joke and the audience roared. And it was like Cam just got a studio audience laugh. I mean, for like someone with a joke ego, that's got to be like, basically heroin.
Well, and that what was cool about that, not to talk about myself too much, is
no, I mean, it's such a good story. Like, we like, nobody's gonna be upset that you're telling it. Like, it's too good to, come on, just.
But what was cool about that is me, anti-political, anti-war. I found a way to mention that on Tucker's show. Tucker approves of what I did and the way that I did it, and it was like, you made a joke. We don't want to lose the ability to be funny. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have Bill Maher on the left saying the same thing. And so I'm in this weird place where my bosses can't really fire me because I've pleased both sides. It's just wonderful.
And like, I mean, the funniest part of that video to me is like watching when you were on Tucker, is like, you're talking about the casualties of the Iraq War, and this is a topic that Tucker Carlson is never ever going to talk about. Like, that's something we do not talk about on the Tucker Carlson show.
They're trying to sell pharmaceuticals to a certain brand of people.
And Tucker Carlson is like smiling because he knows, like, he's only got to wait 10 seconds and it's over.
Well,
like,
what was funny?
It's amazing. Like that obviously, like, he wasn't gonna like argue with you about that because I mean, it would be insane. But it's so fun, like, to just like see his face, and you can just tell, like, inside, like in his soul, he is like squirming.
Yeah,
and I just
because you don't know where I'm gonna go.
Oh, that was the best part.
And that was what's funny, is before we did all of that, they emailed me, and she called me and emailed me a couple times, and she was like, "Is there anything else you want to talk about besides this?"
Mm-hmm.
And so in my mind, this was going to be longer than 2 minutes or whatever, 90 seconds, whatever it ended up being.
Yeah.
And so there's this part of my mind that's like, I think that I did scare him because he didn't know where I would go from that point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And moved on to monologuing.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
I don't know.
That's what's amazing about it, is like, you didn't move on. Like you brought something up, and like, that was, I mean, I don't know. Like, hopefully, like, people see this video and know what we're talking about, because it's like incredible. But just like the idea of like just sticking there, like staying on your message, and like there's no escape. Like Tucker Carlson can't do shit. He's just gotta go like, oh yeah.
I also don't.
It's amazing.
I don't think he expected me to speak as much as I did. I think he expected he expected to ask questions and me answer them shortly, like everyone else does. And I was just like, here's a point.
I think he wanted you to be a pig. Like, I think that's what he wanted.
Yeah.
Like, he wanted you to be like, yeah, like women are crazy, and I mean, I don't know what he wanted, but like I have an idea of like what the producers were looking for when they put you on that show.
Right.
You should have seen my notes though. I'll have to share with you those after the show, because you know you have to keep some mystery for the audience.
For sure.
But like I had my notes of what I was going to talk about, and it was going to be blasting the corporate press. And so I think that, you know, the war thing was really cool to get into, but had they given me more time, I'd have given them an earful about the corporate press.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you nailed it. I honestly think you nailed it. It's 90 seconds long or whatever. Like I mean, it's the same thing. Like if I had to call the FBI and like threaten a politician again, I would never like I feel like I've done that. Like
yeah.
Like it you know, I hit all the beats. I said I was gonna sell weed to little kids. Like I couldn't outdo that ever.
Yeah.
Like you just even if I try, like, it would be insane to like try to replicate something like that. I hope people don't.
Yeah.
But
No.
like
no, those were big clackers, and you really could have. It could have gone the other way. If they wanted to get squirrely with you, you'd be in a cage right now.
Yeah, I mean, like sometimes you just like hit the beat and then you move to the next thing. And I feel like that's the thing with the FBI, and that's like the thing with like what you're doing, and that going viral on Tucker Carlson, like you can't look at it and go like, man, I wish I would have done this. Like that's just silly, because like, I mean,
that's what I said is you can't expect any more of the man. Like he hit an anti-war note. He disparaged the corporate press.
And Tucker squirmed.
And he made Tucker laugh right out of the gate. I was like, you literally hit every point. Nothing more could be expected of you.
Yeah.
Like
all I'm trying to do now.
The only thing I regret about the Tucker Carlson interview, Cam, is that they wouldn't let you wear your cowboy hat. I was so mad about that.
I mean, yeah, I'm not going on like the, you know, like I wear a Salem hat all the time because like
is that a Salem cigarettes hat
videos.
Yeah, that's awesome. How old is that hat?
I have no idea. I got it at a thrift store in 2015.
That's gonna be like a 30-year-old hat. I'm not even like.
I mean, Salem cigarettes don't exist anymore.
Right. So I'm like this, and that's being generous. Like that could be a 40-year-old hat. Like that hat could be as old as me.
Yes, I mean it's just one of these things. Like I love to thrift. Like I mean, we're way off topic here, but like love to thrift, love to find like weird like items, like a Salem cigarette hat. Like it's just, you know, you can picture some old lady like cutting out like the coupons. Like cigarettes used to have like little like coupons.
She died for that hat.
For clothes and shit. Like Camel used to do that all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think I still have Camel bucks from when I smoked as a teenager.
Yeah.
Never got my backpack.
But no, I mean, like it's. I want to help you in your quest, and I'm still a small audience. I had a big moment. I'm trying to figure out how I can utilize that moment.
I have like 40. I mean, I don't know how many followers I have on Twitter. It's nobody. Like I have one audience. It's on TikTok, and like I could release I could eat something spicy, make a video, and 100,000 people would see it. Like if I wanted to.
Right.
But like so other social media, I don't know a fucking thing.
Right. Well, and
we're all growing together. Like it's a process, and the more people like people will find this. People will find the show, and then like somebody else, it gets shared, like who knows? Like let's say like the body like Mark goes to prison. Like people will look at this show because it's like, how did that happen?
Right. Well, and if there are any major, updates, I want you to come back and talk.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. I mean, this is super fun to do this with the American flag in the background. I love
it. But no, that's the thing. Like I think the most amazing thing about my whole situation with Tucker and with this joke and with the Washington Post was that for the first time in my life, I've excelled, and I'm not being big-headed, but I've excelled and I've gained followers and stuff because of what I do that I love doing.
Yeah.
Which is slinging out tweets, which is slinging out jokes that I write. And so I'm extremely thrilled. Like it's the shit poster's dream to be able to make a joke that just screws up an entire newsroom.
Correct. I mean, that's amazing.
Now, if I can define real quick for anybody who might not be sure, a joke is when you say something that you don't mean to make people laugh. You don't mean it.
All I'm going to say is that if I were to call the FBI right now, just based on the coverage that I got from my joke, I would be telling the FBI that I was going to punch Ben Shapiro in the face for not understanding humor.
Yeah, I'd like that. Ben Shapiro, he's fun. There's the
internet
whole, like, I mean, the internet, like, I'm not even going to go into like my favorite Ben Shapiro thing on the internet because it's like totally inappropriate. But I will say that, like, I mean, I've sort of experienced that too. Like when, like, it's crazy. This is what's crazy about my experience is like when I got the tape of this guy getting arrested and his kids getting taken away and him calling his daughter's property, like, and cut it down to TikTok size. Like I had no doubt, zero doubt, like this is going to go viral. Like this, like when Newsweek came and wrote a story, I was like, okay, like that's what I expected. Like, for a year and a half, I did this in complete obscurity. Everybody thought I was insane. It was like, there's Syran does this weird cult thing, and like I was dedicating my life to it. I turned it into a magazine. I did all kinds of crazy shit to get this bigger and bigger and bigger. And like then, like at a certain point, like it was serendipity. I got an email like, hey, some people have been arrested. I saw your documentary. I think they're in this group. Like, and all of a sudden, like, I have 32,000 followers on TikTok. Like I didn't plan for like these kids to get rescued. I never thought, like, I didn't even know they were calling the kids property. Like that's just something that happened. And I happen to have had shit on the internet about these people. So when somebody put them in Google, they could find me. Like nobody contacted me. Nobody gave a shit about what I was doing until like a fucking ocean of people like cared about what I was doing.
Right.
Like,
well, let me just tell you, you got me with the Mitch McConnell thing.
Yeah. And Mitch McConnell, like people, like, I think that it's like, I love when people start there or get the Mitch McConnell thing because like it's honestly it's just fucking funny. Like Mitch McConnell is a piece of shit.
I'll be honest with you though, like if you'd posted it and it had been completely serious, like if you had been like Ted Kaczynski calling, I would have been like, oh, this is weird.
DC, by the way,
you do what?
I literally bought a plane ticket to Washington DC and told so that they would come like and find me. Like I spent, I don't know, $200 or something like that on a plane ticket from Minneapolis to Washington DC because I was like, motherfuckers, like call the FAA. Like I'm literally doing this. I mean, I never would have done it, but it was during the pandemic and I had gotten all this. I was getting like $900 a week for unemployment, so I had some money saved, and I was like, you know, this like buying this plane ticket or whatever is worth it.
Right.
Like, I mean,
well, that's so smart.
But like but that's how serious I was about it. Like, I know you can tell in the call that it's not serious, but I was dead serious about like going to jail and whatever was going to happen to me. I did.
You had to
totally
know
real.
going in, of course, that that's a possibility when you're saying, I'm going to kill this guy, I'm going to sell weed to little kids, whatever it is. Like, they could have run in there with a SWAT team. And
yeah, that's what I was hoping. I mean, I was hoping they'd take my computer.
Right.
All I'm
It's
saying
astonishing to me that
is
honestly they were like, no, get out of here, go away. Like,
yeah.
they're not interested. That's the part that blows my mind is they just don't even seem to care. They're like, there's a literal effing cult over here that's abusing kids, and they're like,
Yeah, but it's not illegal to have a cult. Like, it's not illegal. Like so much. Mark is a terrible fucking person. This guy that I'm trying to expose, and I have my ideas of where I want Mark, but like
Cuba.
there's tons of stuff that he's done that is horrible, that is just like 100% legal. It's not like if nobody says no, it's legal. Like, if you give somebody $1,000 and you're like, yeah, like this is to please God, it's, and then you go to the police and say like, hey, this guy extorted me for $1,000. Like, you're not going to win that case. There's not going to be a police record.
Buyer beware.
Like, yeah, I mean, it's that's the complication with stories like this and groups like this, is they are evasive, and Mark, the guy who runs this, is a smart motherfucker. There are other people in leadership who are extraordinarily intelligent. The people that I mean, the woman that worked at the radio station that sort of like got in my head in 2017, like, she is a smart, charismatic, very like to convince me of the things she convinced me of. I think she's like a brilliant person. Like, that's what's going on. Like, and that's what you're going up against with like a cult. And I hope you talk to more. Like, I'm not a survivor, but I hope you talk to survivors and sort of hear like the stories of like how people deal with like this motherfucker that destroyed their lives.
Yeah,
because like it's difficult as shit. It's an impossible thing sometimes.
Several weeks ago, we spoke to a guy named Ben. What was his? Ben Brown.
Yes.
And I found him on TikTok as well, and he described himself as a polyglot. He grew up in a polygamous cult. And I was like, I want to talk to you. And then later on, we found out that it was he is the nephew of Cody Brown from Sister Wives.
Wow.
And so we talked to him, and that was kind of like, we've talked about cults before, but we haven't talked with a survivor. So that was our first time talking to someone like that. And so that's why
it lit kind of a fire too, because we realized that there is like a story to be told here, and that there are voices that can be amplified.
Right.
And that,
we're talking to our friend Hex in a few weeks, and he grew up in the Nation of Islam, which is its own weird little cult, which like I can't tell you how hilarious the story of Yaqub is to me. I don't know if you know that one.
I don't know that one, but I mean, I'm somewhat familiar.
Simply, the idea with the Nation of Islam is that white people were created by a scientist 6,600 years ago. His name was Yaqub, and he created white people, and that is why white people exist and why they're evil.
And people believe that, like, with their heart and soul. It's just like, I mean, when you talk about like Heaven's Gate, people are like, man, these fucking weirdos. If you look at it, it's like, man, like this story about the comet and like meeting aliens and stuff like that, like that was convincing because of who it was told by, where it came from, like the whole like group mentality, like that. Things that sound insane are not insane when you enter cult land.
I will give the leader of that cult some credit, because one of the things that they did in this cult was they would gild themselves, meaning they would become eunuchs willingly.
Yeah.
And the leader did it too.
And
And
that,
so
that is so amazing. I bring that up all the time whenever somebody tells me that brainwashing isn't real or mind control isn't real, because people say that shit to me, and I always, the very first thing I bring up is like, is if I'm talking to a man, especially, like, there were all these people who went to Mexico and were castrated for this like spaceship program. Like,
Marshall
if you don't believe in
Applewhite.
brainwashing, like what why would anybody ever do that?
Well, and like it's crazy because Marshall Applewhite, and I forget the lady's name that did it with him, they called themselves Bo and Peep, and people took them deadly seriously.
Yeah.
To the point of suicide.
Yep.
Like it's mind-numbing to me.
people need to believe in something though, and I like no matter what it is, if you have like a moral code, if you have a political code or a religious code, it is ingrained in the human being to believe. And when you go ahead.
Just something that, like, I'm sorry, this is an aside again, and I know we're going long, but like,
good.
they were internet developers in Heaven's Gate. Like, they had a website,
Right.
They were doing all kinds of shit on the internet, and like, it's still online. Like, their website, there's a former member of Heaven's Gate who didn't go on the away team, who keeps their internet website from fucking 1997 alive every year. You know, he renews it. Like, if somebody's out there doing that, like, if I don't renew my website, it's gone. It's
beautiful about the Heaven's Gate website is it still looks exactly like it did in 1997.
Looks exactly the same. And that's the most popular article that has ever been put on Body International. Has nothing to do with the body. There were like 26,000 people in a day when it was like, hey, like 25th anniversary of Heaven's Gate. Isn't it fucking insane that this website is still online?
Well, and look at Children of God. They're still around, even though Ricky, what was his name?
I think they're called something else now, though. Like,
yeah, they changed their name, but Ricky Rodriguez, after he committed his murders, it's still going.
Yeah.
Like, unbelievable.
Have you guys heard of a cult called Love Has Won?
Yes.
Yeah, that's wait. Love Has Won is the Mother of God
Rolling
cult.
Stone guy who's going to publish an article about this like soon. He's submitting this week about the body. If you Google Love Has Won, it's the number one result is the Rolling Stone article he wrote.
Okay, good. I'm glad some people are getting that out there because that's
a very great article.
Self-empowered hippie oil kind of thing that's like not specifically religious and just kind of shows that mentality in people doesn't necessarily have to come from like a damaged religious place.
But there is like a form of like worship, like even if it's not like, you know, some Christian thing or something like that.
Right. They make themselves the god.
Well, and that's actually the same cult that I referenced earlier, the Mother of God cult.
Okay, see, I thought you were referring to when I was in college in like 2012 through 2016. There were women on campus that you would see, and they always traveled in pairs. Would go around talking to young women, talking to them about God as a woman. And it came out that these women were recruiting girls for sex trafficking. They would always invite you to do a Bible study about how God is a woman off campus. And apparently there was something to do with like sex trafficking girls. An email went out across the school and that kind of got wrapped up. They weren't allowed on campus anymore. But when you said the Mother of God cult, I thought you were talking about the sex trafficking chick. I was approached by those people. They were like, yeah, did you know that God's a woman? And I'm like, yeah, I got to get to class, crazy lady. Like,
well, that's amazing. That's amazing. Like, I don't know. I guess like I've had my cult interactions or whatever, but yeah, like that whole like campus meeting, like that's a whole nother thing that happens all the time.
And I was so happy to put David Berg on our episode art because not a lot of people even recognize David Berg when they see him.
And he's like he's like one of the biggest monsters in history.
Yeah, and he started Children of God, and he did his comics, and he did what was called flirty fishing.
I know the comics are kind of cool. Like if you look at the art, like that's one of those things. I sort of touched on this before, but like you look at like David Berg's art, and it's like that guy was talented.
Yeah.
I
But
started to
keep
watch.
going. Like, I mean, you should keep telling this story. I
Go
want
ahead,
to
go
point
ahead.
out that like a lot of these people that do this shit are like brilliant in some way, and that
Yeah.
helps them destroy people's lives.
Content warning about David Berg, though. If you start looking into that dude, it is disturbing.
Very.
Yes.
Tread with caution, because I had to turn off the documentary halfway through about him because it upset me a great deal.
The thing
Yeah.
with, I mean, the stuff with the kids is like just too, it's too far.
Bad.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
bad.
Well, it's so bad that Ricky Rodriguez killed
Murdered a
some
bunch of
people over it.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, and
but-
it's like, where do you even stand on like a case like that? It's like,
Right.
I mean,
It's like that
hard
guy,
to-
Gary Planch, I think is his last name, the one who his son was abducted and molested by a coach, and when the coach was finally found and they got he got his son back. The coach, I think it was a coach, was flown back, and Gary was sitting at the phone bank because that was back when we had payphones. And as soon as that man walked past, he pulled out a 38, I think it was a 38 special, and killed him. Like, what do you do in that point? That
I have
guy
so much
knows.
to say about that, but I'm gonna.
Well, I'm just saying.
Oh, is there more?
It's-
Is there more to that? There is always more to the story, isn't there?
No, all I'm saying is like with Ricky Rodriguez, with these people who were hurt by these people, it's emotionally understanding. Like, you can understand why they would want to act in this way. So
as a father, you can place yourself.
How do
in
you
that
adjudicate that?
Right.
Yeah, and there's like a frustration in there that's obvious. Like people like the people who pulled the trigger that you're talking about, they're not psychopaths. Like the guy who was killed, psychopath. The guy who shot him, like, had no other option. Nobody would listen. Nobody would do shit. It's like I'm not gonna shoot Mark in the head.
Right.
In my,
but if it happens,
but it's like anything. Like I don't care what happens. Like, this guy's going down, and the reason why this shit is so important to me is that it's impossible to get these people back. So when I hear some story about a guy who was abused and abused and abused, and he murdered a cult leader, like, I'm like, well, yeah, you know,
okay,
good for him. Like, he did something. When the United States law would do nothing.
Right. Well, in that,
I guess, like, I don't care. I mean, I know that's like,
no, it's like how I didn't feel bad when I found out John McCain had a brain tumor. Like, I don't. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
like, I'm not shedding tears for him going away and for what he did and for the things that he said. I'm not going to cry about that, but I wouldn't shoot him.
no.
You know, like, that's not how I work. That's a very rough thing to say. If anyone's new to the show, yes, I think that there's a death toll that John McCain had that was horrific, and I didn't feel bad that he died. Get over it.
There was a quote that I loved quite a bit that says, "I've never wished anyone dead, but I've read many obituaries with great joy."
Yeah. I mean, you can't even imagine, like, that. I'm getting a newspaper sent to me from Washington, like, tomorrow, that I requested, that has this amazing, like, PR story about the body, where all the members of the body, like, complain about how shitty I am, and say they're doing the normal stuff, and, like, washing is just like this, like, it's just this Christian baptism thing that we don't understand. Like, and I'm going to put that on my wall forever. Like, I don't, if the New York Times writes a cover story, I don't care. Like, that shit from Washington is what's going to be on my wall. Like, just like the progression of things when it comes to, like, taking down these fuckers. And yes, like, I mean, I've totally been in that situation where, like, somebody has died and I'm on the internet and I'm like, well, like, you think about it, if you really think about it, like, this person, like, we shouldn't be celebrating them right now.
Furthermore, if horrible people think I'm a horrible person, I'm doing the right thing, and I'm going to plow forward.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that since we're at 2 hours and 14 minutes,
Yeah,
officially,
we went long.
um,
I appreciate, it was fun though. I feel like once we got off course, it was actually like it was fun to go off course.
oh yeah,
That's kind of the theme of the Mad Ones is we can go anywhere we want to.
Yeah, I
it's
love
wonderful. So there are a few questions I want to ask you before we sign off. And there's a video I want you to watch that makes me laugh every time I see it. So my question first is, this is going to seem extremely irreverent after this whole conversation we've had, but it's kind of like in true crime. There's a similar question there. But who is your favorite cult leader?
Oh, interesting.
Ooh, that is that's tough. I mean, I guess there is this guy. God, I can't even remember. Okay, so there was this cult in Minneapolis. Like I researched like cults in Minnesota like deeply, and there was this guy from an organization that was literally called the organization or the O. God, his last name was Smith.
Of course.
Unoriginal thing after unoriginal thing.
There are a lot of Smiths
he was like
with
a
cult.
plant. Like he wasn't like a real cult leader, but he like murdered this DJ. And like when the cult got found out, like he just disappeared. They owned all these businesses, and all the businesses disappeared. And it's one of these things. Like to me, like living in Minneapolis, like when I heard that story for the first time, it just like I was like, there's no way like this happened here, and like nobody knows about it. And then I looked it up, and it's like they got business records. Like this guy did this thing, murdered somebody, had this political left-wing cult. It was a communist cult, and then like evaporated, and nobody knows what happens to like the last members or whatever. Like that guy, I am just fascinated with. He's also a black cult leader, so he's like most cult leaders are white men. Like I love like cult leaders when I hear stories of like women who are cult leaders or people who are not white being cult leaders. I'm a little like more interested because like it's like that all like it plays a role in everything's about control and how you get control. And I don't know, like I always hate to say like this is my favorite cult story or this is like this is my favorite cult leader or something like that, because I don't want to give the wrong impression that like this is like entertainment or something. Like I'm literally trying to like bring this guy to prison, but I know so many cult stories and I'm so interested in it. I know like there are just stories, I guess this is a terrible answer to your question, but like I guess I know like a whole bunch of stories about cult leaders that are just like unbelievable that I've published on the website. Every time like cult stories in and of themselves are like spectacular. Like they become sensational based on like leadership controls everything. Every cult is as unique as the psychopath who runs it.
Right.
Like you never see two cults that are the same. So like they are fascinating on a human level and on a true crime level, whatever. Like, it's impossible to say like this is the best. Like,
abnormal psychology is fascinating, and so it's not to say that it's your favorite. It's just the one that's the most interesting, the most intriguing, the most sensational.
Like I would say, if we were talking about,
Marshall Applewhite. I guess I got to stop you for a second. Like. Okay, so Heaven's Gate is like the cult that when I talk to people about cults, it's the one I bring up about. It's the one I bring up most. Marshall Applewhite is fascinating as fuck. There's never been anything like that that's ever happened in history. Totally one of a kind. Will never ever happen again. Like that's probably like if you ask me about cults, I'm gonna bring it up because it's so unique.
Right. Yeah, that's a great answer. I was so happy to put him on here because people didn't even know who he was when I had him on this art. They asked me who he was, and I'm like, you don't know Marshall Applewhite?
I'm 37, so like I remember hearing about that. Like I remember like coming home from school or whatever, and my dad being like, you're never gonna believe what just happened in California. And my dad was a news junkie, so it was just on the TV. And obviously, as a kid, like, how do you don't understand what's going on. Like,
Right.
you don't know what a cult is. Like, it's just like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I love the idea of your dad sitting there waiting for you to get home. Like, oh, I can't wait till my 10-year-old gets home so I can tell him this crazy shit.
No, yeah, my dad was cool. I mean, he's not like a news junkie anymore. Like, he sort of like turned that off. But like when I was growing up, like I remember like the O.J. Simpson trial. I remember everything about that because it was like the TV was never off. It was always on court TV, and like the whole entire. I mean, it lasted forever.
Yeah,
and yeah, I mean, I saw everything.
When they announced the verdict, I was at school that day. I think I was in 6th grade, and the world stopped. I remember the bell rang. We were supposed to be in our next class, and the bell rang, and nobody moved. We were all watching the TVs that were in the classrooms.
Yeah,
nobody moved.
It's because
and then
like,
when they
monoculture, like we used to before the internet, like when something was happening, like even like 9/11, like everybody's watching the Today Show or whatever. There will never be another O.J. Simpson trial because like now we have like a billion options.
Right.
You know, people like this cult story I'm saying is like outrageous and like the whole thing is bananas, but like it will happen and then people will like go on TikTok and do the next thing. Like it doesn't. The monoculture is just over, and like that O.J. Simpson thing, like you saw that in school. Like isn't it weird that like your teachers were showing you like the results of a murder case?
Yeah. We were little too. We were in middle school. So I it was my social studies class, but it wasn't just my class. The entire school stopped.
Wow.
The bell rang, nobody moved. And it was like the whole country, in a way, a hush fell over everything. And then the verdict was announced and people went fucking bananas. The teachers had to wrangle us back into our classes, which we were already 30 minutes late for. It was bananas. Yeah. But I'll never forget it as long as I live. I was 12 years old. I think 12. How old were you in 6th grade? 10? 11? Something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's every teacher because they were glued into it too. They wanted to see the verdict.
It was all, I mean, everybody was talking about that. Like, I mean, you could have been like an Amish person and you would have known about what's going on.
If the glove doesn't fit.
And then interestingly, on 9/11, they shut all the TVs at our school off. None of the students knew what was going on. Okay. Yeah. Our teachers, I actually happened to be skipping school that day. So I watched the second plane hit because I was at my friend's house smoking pot. And then we were watching like, oh my God, this plane accidentally ran into this building. How terrible. And we're sitting there like literally passing a joint back and forth going, oh, this is fucking fucked up, man.
And you have no idea that like the world is about to change forever.
And a second plane came around and smashed into the building. And we were just agape. And so we're calling people. They're at school. We're on a payphone at school. People are calling us and we're telling them what's happening because none of the teachers would tell the kids what was going on.
Yeah,
it was pandemonium. I called my dad that night. I was not in trouble for skipping, by the way. I called my dad that night and I said, Dad, what's going to happen now? What should I do? Where should I go? And he told me, go to bed. And when you wake up tomorrow morning, either everything will be completely different or nothing will be different at all. And weirdly, both things ended up being true. Because it wasn't like overnight, everything was different, but in a way, nothing was ever the same again. And so it was this.
Yeah, I mean, it changed the world. It changed America. But you're right. Like there's some things like it didn't change our lives like on a personal level. Like it was like, I don't know. I mean, it's a long thing.
Yeah, that's a whole.
I guess what I want to nail here, since we're talking about 9/11, like Osama bin Laden, cult leader.
Yeah.
Like that guy was he convinced people to do things they would never ever have done with God and with. I mean, there was a reason he was pissed off at the United States. I get it, but like the 9/11, like that is like I don't even give a shit if people complain in the comments or whatever. It's a cult story. Like Osama bin Laden, cult leader. Like that's how dangerous cults are. Like the two biggest atrocities in the United States history are Jonestown and 9/11, and they're both cult stories.
Well,
Mhm.
and let's at least with Bin Laden, trained by the United States.
Yes,
Interesting
Let's not
angle there.
forget that.
Right.
Um,
Right.
absolutely. I mean, I think like the
but
Soviet Union like gave them like, I mean, they had this crazy arsenal of weapons.
My
I mean, it's a
husband
long story with Bin Laden, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like,
my husband showed me a newspaper article from like the 80s, maybe the late 80s, where it had a picture of Osama bin Laden and it said anti-Soviet fighter taking his army on the path to peace.
mhm.
And I thought, God, what a headline.
And peace, yeah, taking it
Peace.
to the path to peace.
Yeah.
What an absurd. I mean, like he was a psychopath. Like he wanted to. He had no
US
problem like murdering thousands of innocent people. Like to like. I mean, he was never gonna like win a war against the United States. He was just like a
didn't
psychopath.
have to.
I mean,
He
and
knew.
brilliant. Like
Yeah.
you got to give Bin Laden every time you talk about Bin Laden. It's not like you got to say like, yeah, he kind of masterminded like the craziest, most successful plot to destroy America ever. Sitting in some like, you know, he's not in some office or whatever. Like devising this plot. Like if you
Right.
like know the history of what they're doing, like what he did was incredible. And I do not mean to like, I mean that only in the way that it was like, you can't believe it was successful that a psychopath did that sort of thing and it worked. Like that
well,
is
it's
unreal.
it's like there are people. So in the 30s or 40s, Time magazine named Adolf Hitler the man of the year, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And people think when they see that, oh, they must have been white supremacists and Nazis. And it was no,
No.
he was just a man that affected so many people. And people talk about, you know, you can call a man great and it can mean either greatly bad or greatly good.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
right.
having that understanding, I think, is really something you need to grasp. Like,
And they're
people
all
do.
they are all
Nuance.
authoritarian narcissists. Like that's what
Right.
Adolf Hitler has in common with Osama bin Laden. Authoritarian, narcissist, willing to do literally anything for their own gain. Like
Right.
this is just something that happens, and I hope that this podcast like kind of gets. I mean, I guess like I don't want to repeat the same shit over and over, but like I think that's really important to
Sure.
to glean.
Yeah.
Is that like all this shit, like these wild stories are all different, but in a way they're like kind of all the same.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a common thread. But yeah,
On
like
that note, I was going to say it would be as depressing as this is. it does lead into the other question because it's like in all
well,
of this, what is
I do. Yeah, I thought of another question. So we'll get
Oh,
to the
yeah.
the big question in a minute.
Sure.
But I do want to know, Jessica, who's your favorite cult leader or cult?
Oh man. Ooh, that's a tough one. I didn't know I was going to be put on the spot. I would have thought about it.
Who interests you?
I recently went through learning about the Love Has Won people, and I watched like her interview on Dr. Phil. I watched a lot of the private videos that are on YouTube about it, and the most fascinating aspect is how they mummified and kept her body after she had died. And all of that, the police, the body cam footage of them coming into the house and discovering the Christmas tree rainbow or the Christmas light rainbow shrine. They had this mummified woman's body.
Is the body cam footage out like on YouTube?
Yes. Oh, yes.
I've never seen that.
I'll send you the link. You think you're prepared to see it, but when they show you, when they look and they show you, you feel the cop's reaction. Like the way the camera moves, you feel it. And that was fascinating. And I definitely, if you're interested or you find abnormal psychology interesting, Love Has Won is a wild ride.
Yeah.
So buckle up.
And I'll answer the question as well. I think that
what's your favorite cult?
Maybe the one that fascinates me the most that I haven't gotten to the bottom of yet is the leader is Shoko Asahara of Aum Shinrikyo.
Oh yeah, that
Subway
is,
guy,
that
right?
is a crazy,
Yeah.
crazy story. Syran,
Yeah, that's
yes.
wild.
Mhm,
That's interesting. So I won't ask you the other question unless you have a quick answer, which would be, who's your favorite murderer?
Oh my God! Obviously, it's the okay. So I used to always say, I guess like I'm tired not of it here, but I
sorry.
would say the guy who dressed as a clown from Illinois.
Oh,
Gacy.
John Wayne Gacy.
John Wayne Gacy, like it's so fucked up. Like I would have arguments. Like I've had this conversation before. Like who's your favorite serial killer? And like
Yeah.
that story is so fucked up. But I've never watched like there's a new documentary on him. I just haven't seen it. Like that story. Like I think it was just like the clown thing that got me. But then Netflix put out a sort of a documentary about Ted Bundy.
I watched
Tapes
that
from
one.
a killer or whatever, and it's like
Yep.
this ridiculously put together thing. Like the concept is like, oh, I'm some journalist who has like these tapes of Ted Bundy, and like that whole plot they introduced at the very beginning means like nothing. It comes up
Yeah.
at the very end of the video. Like
Right.
but it's a great documentary. Like it's got all this footage, it's got all these stories, and like there is nothing like Ted Bundy. He is
No.
the ultimate serial killer, and he was so charismatic. Like I love the videos. Of
Women
him
are
in
still
court.
obsessed with him.
Yeah, the videos they have of him like defending himself in court, like that. There's nothing like that ever. Like, there will never be another Ted Bundy either, because like when you go to the gas station now, there's a camera that points out. Like there will never be a serial killer again. Like when was the last serial killer that like blew my mind was the DC Sniper, and I was like a junior in high school. Like there's like
I remember that.
big time serial killers never gonna happen again. It won't happen ever, because like the world is different, and we won't have and Ted Bundy will always be like he's number one. He's nobody will ever like chase the crown there.
Right.
So quickly, Jessica, your favorite serial killer?
Herb Baumeister. Baumeister.
Okay.
That
Right.
he was a highway killer who
West
would
Valley
pick up
Ranch.
gay men, and he would bring them back to his ranch home where he would murder them, and then he would dump their bodies off in the woods. And the interesting part about this is that the ranch is said to be haunted, so much so that owners cannot keep hold of it. They even sold it to a group of ghost hunters who then sold it. We're like, this place is out of control. We don't want it. Strange occurrences happen there. The place is for sale currently, and my husband will not buy the Herb Baumeister property and open a haunted B&B with me. And I think that that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Voicing my
And-
anxieties.
And I would say my favorite serial killers, and it's based off of one of them is so horrifying that it fascinates me, and the other is what a personality. Is between Albert Fish and
He ate people, right?
Pee Wee Gaskins.
I've never heard of Pee Wee Gaskins.
No, I don't know him.
Fascinating little tiny man. But I thought this is a great way to segue into this video I want to show you, where Charles Manson told people what he thought about Ted Bundy, and then we'll ask you our big question.
Oh,
Okay, yeah, let's go for it.
Bundy's a rumpkin. Bundy's a poop butt. Bundy's his mama's boy. Bundy's out there trying to prove something to his own manhood. That's got nothing to do with me. I don't roll around with poop people like that. I stand with people that can stand with themselves.
What do you think about what he said about pornography?
Pornography? I've been looking at it all my life, and it hasn't affected me anything.
Don't help, Charlie.
Manson,
Don't help.
man. See, okay, I love the Manson stuff, like videos like that. Like they like, I appreciate them. Like, this is my world. Some people get mad at me because they're like on the internet, because they're like, you're just like
You're terrible.
exploiting something, blah blah. And it's like, motherfucker, like this shit is interesting. You can't ignore that it's interesting. And
Right.
the stuff with like Manson, these videos of him like after the arrest, I mean, they're all just like wild and
They're gold.
and you just like, you have to imagine like this guy convinced people to do like horrible things.
Wild.
I mean, and that Manson story, like it's got like the subplots are incredible. Like I know we're super long on this
Sorry.
podcast or video or whatever, but like Manson shot this guy, and like the reason things went like crazy in the Manson cult is that Manson was like on the run and like things needed to change. He shot a guy and thought he murdered him, who survived, and that guy's name is Lotsa Papa. Lotsa Papa is the guy that Charles Manson shot. Like, I'm sure he has another name, but in the police reports, like everything, like he is Lotsa Papa. Like that, he was a gangster sort of person.
It's wonderful.
And it is just like the funniest detail. Like, you know, Lotsa Papa survived and like Charles Manson went down. Like, if you like it, that's just one of those stories that like
He's got an album out.
and he has music. Yeah. I mean, like when people are like upset because like this stuff is entertaining, I'm just like, man,
400 pounds.
you have no idea how much time I dedicate this, how much like I talk to survivors.
There's a lot.
Like I've been fucking brainwashed before. Like I just don't want to hear it. Like like yes, like Charles Manson is fascinating. Yes, like Heaven's Gate. Like there's like I'm a news junkie. I watched that shit when I was a little kid. It's fascinating. Like if you don't think Heaven's Gate is fascinating, like you're crazy.
Yeah.
And boring.
And boring, yeah. And like every person, like people might be offended, but like I honestly think people are like on like dating profiles, it should ask you like, who's your favorite serial killer? Like you get to know people a lot quicker if you knew they were like a Gacy guy.
Someone asked me recently, like, why women are so into true crime and why women seem so obsessed with serial killers. And I think it's on some level we're trying to understand our predator, and we think we're gonna like, I
like that
survive.
a lot. That is like
right.
I like that.
Because I think people think that there's like a sexual fascination there. I know in some cases, like with the Ted Bundy thing, there are women who are seriously turned on by Ted Bundy. I don't know what's wrong with you, lady, but there are a sexual component there. However, I think for the most part, like a lot of women are into true crime because we are the primary victims. So we're studying our predator and we want to know how they act, what they do to get women to get into cars with them.
Yeah, it's always, I mean, it's always women. It's all, I mean, it's women and children, the most vulnerable people. Like that's who, like these are monsters. That's why, you see these serial killer stories where like all the victims are women, or most of the victims are women, or you hear cult stories where like terrible shit happens to little kids. It's like, you know, you're talking about a psychopath doesn't care about what's going on. Or what happens to anybody. It's just about,
but they get confident,
meeting their own satisfaction. Yeah,
they get confident and then they get sloppy. So the more they get away with it, the more they think the world is their oyster. They can do whatever they want, and they all fuck up. And that's the beauty of it.
Dennis Rader screwed up.
Yeah.
So
they all do.
So yeah, we have gone long, and that's a great sign because it means I had a good time. So thank you for coming on.
No, thank you so much for having me.
So our show, this used to be a very different show, and it changed a year or so ago.
Okay.
We noticed that there are a lot of people over the last 2 years that have had their lives wiped out, who feel desperate, who feel sad and depressed. And so one of the things that we wanted to highlight when we restarted the show as it is now was we want to talk about hope. We want to talk about the things that people have to look forward to, silver linings, motivation.
Oh, absolutely.
And so
that's great.
So the question that we ask everyone, at least on their first time, sometimes you have someone on 3 or 4 times, you stop asking. But our question to you is, what is something? It could be in your life, it could be local, global, whatever. What's something in your life that gives you hope and motivates you to carry on doing what you're doing?
You know, this is gonna sound dumb and like I'm a millennial. I get it. It's the internet. It's the thing that gives me hope is like today I got multiple messages like on Facebook from strangers who were talking about, who had information about this group that I've never heard in my entire life. And one of them, like, I got to research the story, but if it's true, it would like blow the lid off everything. Like that happened today. Like also today, there was some troll that was like on TikTok and just kept commenting about how I'm like doing this for TikTok clout, even though like I'm 37, I don't belong on TikTok. Like somebody like pretty much pushed me to do it until I did it. And it worked, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, but I'm not a TikTok person. Like I don't like I don't like look at TikTok. It's just like my stuff and that's it. Like I don't know. But the internet I have been introduced to people who have survived trauma like I've never heard of before. Like I have met people like I'll tell you like one quick anecdote. I know I keep doing this and I'm sorry. But like I met a guy from Chicago last year who told me his cult story. I used to put ads on Craigslist all the time, like looking for writers for cult stories. And there was this guy who told me this story of his life. And it was like an hour and a half of him just like telling me everything that happened. And we were talking about like him writing an article about it. And I was recording it. And I was like, when he was done with the story, I was like, man, that's like the most incredible shit I've ever seen. Like, I can't wait to see this article. And like, he was like, yeah, well, I'll talk to you soon. And we hung up and I never heard from that guy again. He never responded to another email. And I just have this thing on my hard drive. I can't release it. I would never release it. But like, I was there hearing this story from the internet that gave me a broader understanding of the subject that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Like the internet in this situation has been such a gift, and I can't. It's impossible to describe. Like when the kids got rescued, like some stranger found my YouTube video and messaged me. Like that's what gives me hope. Yeah. Is like you know, I honestly believe that like there is a scenario right now that is going to be really tough to get out of. Like these fuckers are stuck that I'm trying to expose. The Body, that's the name of the cult. Mark B is the leader. Like I don't know how they get out of this. Like it's when the internet comes there. Like and we're talking like right now. Like this is the calm period. Like what happens next is like there's a Rolling Stone article, and like I mean, I have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, like Seattle Times is going to want an article after that. Like this is just a point where like, I don't know how these fuckers are going to escape. It's because of the internet, and that gives me hope.
Yeah. Well, no, and I completely understand that
answer.
Because it's like, you know, with in recent days, like social media on the internet has it's too fast for a lot of people who would want to create propaganda or who would want to spin things to be able to cement their narrative before people directly destroy it with evidence.
Right.
Like we're living in an unprecedented time where you're keeping like I'm not saying everyone's nefarious, but there are nefarious people out there who are no longer able to keep up because of the speed of information.
Yeah, and like when I put out videos, like I always put like some tape in there that's authentic. Hard to argue with that. Like Mark saying like Jesus, the first thing Jesus preached was sex. Like that's just on tape forever. It's on the internet forever. Like my website, it's online like as long as I'm alive and can pay Squarespace.
Right.
When you are doing these stories, although they're present for you in your real time, you are committing these otherwise voiceless people, you're committing their stories to history. And so because of the work that you're doing, they will have a voice that lives on, that people will hear about. So maybe this video, we're never going to know that it becomes a really important piece of information for people down the line. We don't know if the content we're making now will survive 100 years from now. We don't even know what the internet is going to do to humanity.
It would be
Because
weird
it's
if
so
it
new.
wasn't on YouTube in 100 years. Like, why would it?
I-
Like, do you pay for this account or something?
Yeah, and so it's
No.
odd to think that we don't. Yeah, it's YouTube. So
Yeah, I mean,
but it's odd to
I will be
think.
dead. You will be dead. You will be dead, and this video will probably be on the internet. Like, that's just the
And then
reality.
they'll watch us and they'll learn about the body or hear about any of the various cults that we've mentioned in this episode tonight, and then be able to go and research them. So we are committing something to the annals of history here. And I always appreciate people like you who are listening to the stories. You're taking in the stories of people and then giving them a voice. And I think that that's such a valuable thing to the posterity of humanity. So like, I really appreciate what you're doing. It is kind of a fringe
I
thing to
appreciate you
talk
saying
about.
that. It's a very nice thing to say. Like, I mean, I again, like, you know, I was really pissed off when I started this, and it was the pandemic. I had all the time in the world, and I was like, you know, I just decided to take these fuckers down on the internet. If I had a real job, if City Pages didn't go under, like, if the government wasn't giving money, like, we wouldn't be here today.
Right.
Like, it's not like I did some like totally noble thing. I just always have to mention that when people are like,
I don't know
you're doing this great thing. It's like, yeah, but like,
I don't think there are ever totally noble things. I think that there are things that we look back on that happen in history and we say that was a noble deed done. But I don't think the person knows in the moment that they're doing a noble deed when they do it. So don't be so quick to shirk away that idea. Or to push away.
I always like, it's just like something, I don't know.
I understand. It's hard to think of ourselves in that way too. And you do want to stay humble in what you're doing. And yeah, I understand that.
Well, and I think that, you know, if you look at it based on narrative and story in our history, the most beautiful love stories that we know of from history, a lot of them are based out of a very angry man taking vengeance. So he didn't feel like it.
I didn't think about it like that, but that's kind of I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, it like there are people who did what they thought was right. It could have been righteous anger. It might not have been, but at the end of the day, you're trying to take down a man who has hurt children, and that's commendable as hell.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you.
But
thank you for
I
having
have,
me on.
dude, all I'm saying is I have to go have a penis washing done, so we need to wrap it up.
Yeah, I got to pee too. Like,
but I do want to
made it this far. It's amazing.
Normally, I'm the one that has to pee at the end of the episode. So right on.
But I do want to let everyone out there know where they can find you and your stuff. For one, all of these links are going to be in the description on all of the videos. It will be on our website otherwise at wearethemadaones.com/147. But I do want to tell you audibly some of the easier things. If you want to read about the body, you can go to thebodyintl.com or cultstories.com. That's correct, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Also, his TikTok is a great way to listen to the story, share the story, and let your friends know what's going on. Over there, he is at Syran Warner, and he's also on Twitter, which he doesn't use as much. But if you want to connect with him there, he's at Free Mel Parker. I do have all of those links in the description, as well as your link tree, so that people can find everything. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to share with people?
No, I mean, I just, I hope we get to like do this again soon. Like, I get nothing to promote, but like literally, we're in the end times with this group, and something is going to happen because something always happens. So,
you have the door is open. You are always welcome here on the Mad Ones. We will leave the light on for you. So when you have something you want to tell us, you just let us know and we'll make space.
This is super fun. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we will let you go peace. So we'll take you off here.
All right, thank
But
you.
thank you so much. Thank you for creating the content you're creating and fighting the fight you're fighting.
No,
And,
thank you both. Like it was great to meet both of you. Like it's super. I mean, I love it. It's great. You guys are doing amazing stuff. Like I'm so impressed with like people who are. I mean, it's the internet is like super cool, and you guys are like doing something awesome. I'm blessed to be like a guest. Like that's super. It's fun. I love it.
Thank you. But yeah, like I said, we'll let you go. Thank you so much. You have a good night.
Thank you so much. Have a fabulous evening.
See ya.
We will talk again.
Absolutely.
Please, thank you.
All right. So for the rest of you, I need to go through what's coming up. Next week is the end of the month stream. So that means it is a little bit of a decompression stream. It's a little bit of event stream. So we're having a friend on. We're going to do that. I still need to talk to Monica about this. I don't know if it'll work or not. But my plan is at the end of the month to have a friend on. We can talk about different things. People can ask questions. We can do all sorts of things, but it's a decompression because we talk about a lot of serious stuff. We want to be able to have that moment. So next week we have our friend Monica Perez coming on. And if it's possible, we are going to start doing our monthly hangouts just after that with the guest that came on at the end of the month. Right. So that is my goal. I'll let you know if that happens or not in Patreon. But next week we have Monica Perez. Just after that, I don't know if you like stoner metal. I don't know if you like punk music, but if you've ever heard of the band Sleep, you may know of this guy. His name is Justin Marler. He was the guitarist of the band Sleep just previous to them becoming huge. He didn't continue with the band because he decided instead to become an Orthodox monk. So we're going to speak to him about that, about his time in the band, about his time as a monk and the time after. It's going to be very interesting. I'm really stoked about that. After that, we're talking to our friend Hex, who, like we mentioned earlier, grew up in the Nation of Islam. And so we're going to ask him what that's like, what he believed. We're going to ask about Jacob. Going to be a lot of fun. After that, we have a girl named Kayla Cox coming on. Kayla has just recently left the Torah observant Hebrew roots movement, which is one of the movements that Paul the Apostle fought in the first century and is still going on today. And I think it's a very interesting conversation for anyone because it doesn't make sense to anyone who has any grasp of Christianity, like any fair grasp of Christianity. So that's going to be exciting. Beyond that, if you want to join our Patreon, patreon.com/themadones, t-shirts and mugs and tanks are over at wearethemadones.com/store. I do have a special shirt for my destruction of the Washington Post. It has a picture of both of those reporters, and across their eyes it says cyberbully journalists. I think it's worth looking at. wearethemadones.com/store. I'm on Twitter at HamCarlos. Jessica's on Twitter at SuitCampist. If you are listening and you'd rather watch, you can do that on YouTube, Rockfin, or Odyssey. YouTube.com/themadones. On the other two, search for it. It's the best way to do it. If you are watching and would like to listen, for one, any podcatcher you like, we're going to be on there. If you are a patron, you get the special feed with the extra episodes that we didn't publish for everyone else. But we're on all podcatchers or wearethemadones.com. That's all the things, right? Like, yes. Subscribe, share with your friends. We've gone over 1,000 subscribers. Now it's time to get over 4,000 watch hours. We're so close to monetization and growing and being in the algorithms that matter. So help us along. And that's it. Got anything to say?
No, usually I have to pee by now, but I don't. Interesting.
I'm not
I guess
gonna lie to you. I need to pee.
Yeah. Interesting role reversal that we have going on right now.
There's a penis washing in my future that I need.
That is more information than I needed to know about.
It's never mind.
Yeah.
But if that's all, thank you for joining me yet again this week, Jessica. I appreciate you and your insights and your questions that I wouldn't think to answer or think to ask. Why would I not think to
Absolutely.
answer them? That's a stupid thing to say. What a dumb
It's
shit
late.
I am.
We're rolling
Beyond
into
that,
like the midnight hour here. So
we love you guys. Thank you for watching. Help us do more. We're here for it. Yeah. And as always, you have a chance to be a light in the world, so go light it up.